Hello and welcome along here live on our game. Myself, Shane Stapleton, Michael Verney with me. Brought to you by OurGame.com. If you want to get this slick little Mayo number, this little zip up top, if you want to get that Cork jersey, maybe you want to get one of the other ones from the collection there, the range that OurGame.com have, go to their website and use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel. The button in the bottom right-hand corner as you look at it, just underneath Michael Verney there. Hit that on YouTube and follow us on all the other social channels. And of course, as ever, if you want the audio podcast, plenty of people following us on Patreon at this stage. It'd be great to have a few more. Patreon.com/OurGame. Michael Verney, there's no better place to start, given what's going on in Croke Park at this very moment, than this man himself. Standing outside the fire.
He has the boots on, in fairness. He has the boots on. He's the double denim on. He has the hat on. I'd say a lot of people thought they'd never see him in Croke Park again or see him in Croke Park at all, but he's there anyway.
He doesn't look too happy.
No, you wouldn't know what's been after thrown at him. Like he put a lot of noses out of joint a couple of years ago when all those concerts were cancelled. He's such a massive following, and I was only saying to you off air there as well. Like the fact that he's not on Spotify, you can't get his original songs on YouTube. He's actually built himself up to a level of stardom and then cut people off, and now they have to go to his concerts if they want to hear him.
And I presume you would have done a bit of line dancing as a young lad, you would?
I've done every sort of dancing, all badly.
Yeah, set dancing, Irish dancing, yeah.
Didn't do any Irish dancing, actually. My sisters did it, but I somehow managed to get away without doing it. I wish I had done it because it would have been more nimble on my feet, to be honest with you. I wish I could go back and all the things that I thought were, oh, that's not manly, or why would I do that? And realize, should have been doing a bit of ballet, should have been doing a bit of dancing, should have been doing all these things.
Bit of hip hop dancing like I tried once.
Yeah, well, Shane, not been smart now. If I ever have kids, which I hope I do, there's three things I'd love for them to be able to do. I'd love for them to be able to play an instrument, to sing, and to dance. Hurling actually comes after that. But if you can play a musical instrument like a guitar, you'll always be the life and soul of the party. If you can dance, you'll be just comfortable in any situation. And to sing as well, you'll be comfortable in so many situations as well.
And a good storyteller. I'll tell you what, people who are able to hold court in the room and tell a good story, hard bait them. Because we've all been in that situation where we've tried to tell a big story and all of a sudden people are looking at you thinking, when is the punchline actually coming here? And it's a disaster. I know I've definitely done that a few times.
Yeah, there's people that can actually draw you in, and to be fair to them, they're obviously good footballers down there as well, but Kerry folk are really, really good at that. There's a Shanna Key kind of to them, and they just kind of draw you in, yeah. But there's nothing worse than the tumbleweed blowing past after you hit the punchline in the story.
Yeah, it's tough to take, and I've definitely done that a few times. By the way, what an unbelievable weekend of GAA it was. I mean, obviously, the joke is over now in soccer, now that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is gone. So, I mean, that's kind of ruined soccer for me a little bit, because I was getting such joy out of watching him be a disaster for Man United. He's gone. But, unbelievable stuff, really, in the club GAA. Think of the last-second goals, like we're going to talk about Rhinos now. Nace as well. I think it was like a block down. Tullamore were trying to clear the ball, and it was a block down from Dara Kerwin. Ended up changing things at the last. There was penalty shootouts. I was at the Division 2 Dublin football final over the weekend. It was just about to go to penalties, and then a last-second goal. Like, the club has been absolutely unbelievable. Now, there's the funny thing is, though, if you were to only watch what was on telly over the weekend, i.e. the Kerry semi-final, again, though, it did go to penalties, so that was dramatic. Kieran Donaghy scored the winner. But a terrible game for long spells. The Dublin final, there was no score after 23 minutes. The Mayo football final, I was pulling my hair out watching it. Some of the lads wanted to change the channel and everything. I had to fight hard to not have Man City, Everton and Spurs Leeds being turned on. But, geez, there was still some drama.
Yeah, there was unbelievable drama elsewhere. I was up at Mullinyock against Blessington, which was another bizarre game that we get into. I was nearly falling asleep at one stage, and then all of a sudden it turned into an unbelievable game. Red Lad said there about gymnastics. I actually did gymnastics when I was younger, and I always liked it as a result of it since, doing the old teddy bear rolls or the backward roll or the pencil roll. I was always a big fan of that. But if you're just looking at what was on TV, it probably didn't look like a great weekend. But there was some amount of things going on behind the scenes, and I implore RTE and TG Carter that regardless of what standard of a hurling game is on at the weekend, just televise it. Have at least one hurling game televised every weekend. You will rarely be disappointed, particularly at this time of the year, because there'll be more mistakes. The striking won't be as crisp. It'll actually be even more entertaining sometimes than during the summer.
Yeah, well, last weekend was some weekend of it. I mean, like, the truth of it is, every weekend there are brilliant hurling matches, there are terrible hurling matches, there are brilliant football matches, there are terrible football matches, and it's kind of luck of the draw to some degree. I mean, the week beforehand, RT had the Dublin hurling final, and it was complete drama. And then the same with the Tip hurling final the following day. So, like, the Donegal football final was turgid enough stuff there recently. The only thing that stood out to me was the elbow into the face at the end, and that's not the reason that you wanted to stand out. By the way, comment in from Joseph O'Hanlon. As a Chelsea fan, I wanted Ole to stay at least one more week as we're playing Man United next. Cork hurling should have been on the telly, says Conor Lehan. Yeah, I'm not sure why that wasn't on anywhere. We're going to have Fintan O'Toole on the show as we go along here. He was at that game, and he was also at did I call it the Premier final or whatever it was, Father O'Neill's against Canturk before, and it's had so many name changes at this stage, it's where it's Puff Daddy.
There's I don't know if you've ever seen the film Basketball with the two boys from South Park, and it's just basically all these convoluted north, south, east, west Division 3 final, and it's just like Cork is actually very hard to understand now at this stage. I'm sure if you're in the county you understand it, but it is very convoluted for an outsider looking in.
What do you make of that comment there from Pádraig Keeshan, if you want to read it out?
Are you fans of county finals being played on Saturday night to get them on RT? If I was a player, no way would I want to play a county final under lights. No way. No, just it doesn't. To be honest with you, it changes. Playing a game at night changes a game completely for me. There's always that bit of kind of almost like dew in the ground. It's wet. It's a different type of game. I personally would not I think it's degrading for a county final to be played under lights. That's just that's just my own personal view. I just would not like apart from fixture congestion, you need to play a game during the week or on a Friday night or something like that to appease a broadcaster. I don't like that, but I'm solely talking about from a player's point of view, because my eyesight wouldn't be one of my strongest points, and playing in the dark would not be good for me. And I know plenty of other players like that. As a pundit, as a journalist, as a spectator, I love it, but I'm just talking about from a player's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point on the eyesight, so I totally take that one. But like, we played the All-Ireland Club finals on Saturdays, and the first one, that definitely wasn't dark, but the second one, it was dark. It was under lights, and I thought it was brilliant, like great spectacle, all that. The game started off during the daytime, so it was bright then.
I think that's a bit different now. I will say that. I think like a 7:30 county final on a Saturday night, like the conditions are an awful lot different than they would be at 4 o'clock in the day, where you're maybe turning on the lights for the last 15 or 20 minutes.
How would you feel about like Saturday at 2 p.m?
I tell you what, from the point of view of getting a good crack at the weekend, I think it's ideal.
Yeah, because like when you think sometimes there could be a county or a club championship match or an inter-county championship match on a bank holiday Monday at like 6 p.m, 7 p.m. That's unbelievably unfair on a player.
Yeah, there's the one thing players will always say, that you're waiting the whole weekend, you're losing the weekend or whatever. I think that a lot of them will be happy with Saturday games. The only thing is that Saturday probably maybe doesn't suit a lot of other people then as well, because farmers and many other people will be working on a Saturday in particular. You can't suit everyone, but I, as a player, I wouldn't be a fan of county finals under lights.
Okay, we'll run through some of the comments. Keep them coming in, as always, to help make the show. Pure Hatchet says, how are you lads? Heard a story that Rob Downey of Glen Rovers bought a laminated hurley in anticipation for Graham Mulcahy in Munster and won't get the chance now. Under the Lights is the best. Only so many games can be shown on TV. Saturday games are good. Coolderry must be 6, as Paul Young. Thought they had it. Fair play to Ken Hogan. Some achievement. In fact, Ken Hogan, not only did he win with St. Ryan's the county title in Offaly, he also won with his native Lara a Camogie title, Junior B in Tipperary yesterday. So a fair old double there. John O'Sullivan says, Cork hurling is Premier Senior, Senior A, Premier Intermediate, Intermediate A. I mean, look, is it even worth finishing that?
He's not serious about the lower intermediate, is he? That's not a real thing, is it? Hardly.
I think it is. Mark Corcoran, I'm not going to read out nah, because I'm going to have to kind of half sing it. Saints at the wheel, Saints at the wheel. Is this an Ollie's at the wheel type thing? Because God knows I've been driving the boot into Ollie and been at the wheel and having that exploding F1 car for the last couple of years. I got some crack out of that. Because Man United fans used to torture me growing up. Like, you grow up small town Bursley, there's nothing only Man United fans. And at the time, early to mid-90s, some very quiet Liverpool fans. You know,
Yeah.
so they weren't saying a whole lot. But by God, you had to listen to some chirping from United fans.
It's an exploding bus that you got. The one I kept getting in WhatsApp groups was Ollie is Austin Powers trying to turn that, the thing. He can't turn it. It's not possible. So he's stuck again.
ML89 hated playing under lights. Always felt a bit degrading for a final. Yeah, there's that word degrading again. I obviously don't share that thought because I play games under lights, and the odd time there's a bit of a glare under a high ball, but otherwise I thought it was fine. But again, the point, if you can't see the ball, I can see why you'd have a massive objection to it.
I think it changes conditions massively, Shane, playing at night. That would be one of the big things I would say. The ball is the ball is dry during the day, barring it's raining. At night, it's a kind of a sloppy kind of a ball. There's that bit of dew on the ground. That's what happens at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, in a winter evening in particular. And it's different conditions.
Yeah. By the way, people, we're going to be doing a club power rankings. We did one not so long ago. It's starting to look a little bit silly now.
This is what we're doing with it today. We're ripping it up.
Yeah. So we'll display that on screen in a minute or two. But first of all, just run through a few more comments. Gerard Og crack on. Personal opinion, but I was at the Dublin final between Crokes and Nafina, and the under lights seemed to add to the occasion. That was last Saturday. If you win a county final on the Saturday night, extra day on the beer. Lose a county final on the Saturday night, extra day on the beer. Great show.
I do agree with him on that. That's a big thing, and you are definitely thinking of the players. Listen, they're still not going to be on work on Monday regardless anyway.
Let's see, Eamon Fogarty, Loughmore, just some crowd to be fair. The double is very much on now if John Maher isn't too bad. So I was looking at an interview that Stephen Gleeson did with David Kennedy after the game yesterday. Now I can't remember all the names off the top of my head, but the Loughmore team that beat Clonmel Commercials in such dramatic circumstances yesterday, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. John McGrath, I mean, the goat of all goats, 6 weeks in a row he's after getting man of the match between both codes. Like, has that ever been done before? But,
what did you call him, Shane? What did you call him there when we were talking beforehand? John what?
John McGourt.
John McGourt. I tell you, that's unbelievable. Like.
But I think David Kennedy, who's still part of the panel, I presume in both codes, he was saying that they were down 6 starters from last year. Well, now Brian McGrath came on, broken thumb and all. He came on and he wasn't giving away too much in his post-match interview about his thumb. He was just, I'll play and I'll come on if I'm needed, etc., etc. But they were down 6 guys from the match a year before. John Maher, he has a hamstring problem. Hopefully he'll be available for the county hurling final replay next week. But yeah, some stuff from Loughmore. Let us know, what else did you think was brilliant from the weekend? Let's see. Yeah, lower intermediate is real. Gone next year. Kevin O'Donovan had to make amends for the mess Frank Murphy made of the championship in the years previous. The power rankings need wiping from the internet. Verney loves the 90s comedy movie references. Do you know what movie I watched from the 90s over the weekend? Again, like, depending on the age profile of some of our viewers here, you may have heard of it, you may never have heard of it. I went to play snooker there Thursday night with a friend of mine. Snooker hall closed down. There had been a fire in wherever the electrics were, out at Darcy McGee's on the Spawell roundabout. So I couldn't play a bit of snook. So back to a friend's house, ended up watching Demolition Man. Do you remember that film?
Yeah, I remember it. I've never seen it, but I remember hearing of it. All right,
it's one of the all-time greats. Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. John Spartan against Simon Phoenix. Like, that pure bozo, chewing gum for the eyes 90s movie. Absolutely stupid, but absolutely brilliant at the same time.
I'd be more of a Hot Shots Part 2 man or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, that was awesome. It's fantastic.
Just on what our viewer said there, like, I have no hesitation in saying that Wayne's World is probably one of my favourite films of all time, and that's as 90s comedy as you get.
Yeah. Sean O'Sullivan said, did you see the story about Ballygunner? They were facilitating youth soccer in the Astro, and GAHQ wrote to them to ban them using the Astro, so Ballygunner had to kick them out. Didn't know about that story.
Yeah, no, I saw that actually, yeah. The soccer club had to find somewhere else. They'd basically been using that facility. That's happening in a lot of towns and communities around where they're sharing facilities, and I don't see any issue with it whatsoever, to be honest with you. they're all part of the community, and all sports should be able to come together within a community. But it'll be interesting to see how that story unfolds.
Yeah, Patrick Hickey's talking about Demolition Man. Sandra Bullock was in it. Yeah, and a revelation, I have to say, in it too. Thomas Shanahan, I see the Tip replays on TV again next week. Should be good again with Loughmore going for the double. I'll tell you what, I'll ask this now, and people, we might come back to it later on. Do you think Loughmore are more likely to win the county hurling replay because they won at the weekend? So are they coming into it now with that positive bounce? If they had to lose the football final, would there sort of be a negativity around the club for the week leading into the hurling final? Or what way? Is it a good or a bad thing that they've won the football in terms of prospects for the hurling?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So the monkey is off the back now. They're not. If they had lost, we'll just say, and they lost in the same scenario as they won yesterday, they're going into the hurling, and you can actually want to win it too much and end up putting too much pressure on yourself. Whereas now, I always talk about this kind of release valve of actually getting over the line. They have a county final in the bag now. They're on the crest of a wave. Sure, they'll enjoy themselves for a day or two, get back to the hurling. And I think I think it's worth a point or two to them, I have to say.
Yeah. It's very backwards of an organisation that claims to be about the community to kick off a community team, Ori Ballygunner story. I mean, in a lot of clubs, I think, if you've got the facilities and you can rent it out for Astro and make money for the club, I mean, I don't see a downside to do it. I mean, if there are people in the local village, why not allow them to use the amenities to play a bit of soccer to enjoy themselves? Like, I regularly play a few times a week here up in Dublin, and it's great. If I had nowhere to play, I'd be very frustrated.
100%. And it just means that, the soccer club that was using Ballygunner, they probably don't need to develop those facilities themselves, and we probably could save a couple of 100,000 from having to make a development by just using services or amenities that are already available to them. So I think that's a win-win. Ballygunner obviously get a few quid, and the other team get somewhere to train. So I'm hoping something like that will be resolved now, because you don't want to see any team left without somewhere to train. And I think that was like a nursery, basically, soccer kind of a nursery. So just we want people playing sport regardless of what it is.
Yeah. Fergus Butler, has there ever been as many clubs going for doubles as this year? Naas, Kilmacud, Loughmore, etc. I mean, it is absolutely brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember as many as this now. Like, I don't remember as many as this in recent times. You have Cratloe maybe in a given year, a couple of other teams maybe going for doubles, but yeah, this year is particularly prominent, and it's not like actually in a split season county. Like, you'd maybe thought it would have been more likely in Wexford, even though Shelmaliers won the hurling in 2020 and then won the football in 2021. You think maybe you'd be able to do the two of them in 1 year if in those split season counties, but these are not split season counties. They're counties where it's hurling, then football, hurling, then football, and it makes it even more remarkable. Even though Kilmacud is not, like, let's call it a spade, that's not a double really, in the sense of there's not a load of dual players. Loughmore is a proper double. Naas is they've a decent handful of them as well. That's a proper double.
It's like it's a brilliant achievement for Kilmacud Crokes to do that. Yeah. But I think everyone would differentiate, the achievement of one set of players doing it versus two sets of players winning both. Like, it's still brilliant, and you don't want people to feel like you're almost slating it or trying to take something away from it, but it isn't the exact same thing. Like, it's just not.
No, they're not the same thing. And in fairness, Loughmore only have those players available to them, so maybe it's only more natural that they're going to be, it's going to be the same personnel. Kilmacud have, a plethora of players available to them, so maybe it's more natural that they have the luxury that they can say, we kind of want you playing hurling, or we kind of want you playing football. So that's largely why there's different personnel there.
John O'Sullivan adds, not senior, but Kanturk going for Senior A and Premier Intermediate double. Of course, if we had any idea where in the pecking order Senior A and Premier Intermediate double, I'm only joking. We're actually going to be talking to Fintan O'Toole about what Kanturk did over the weekend, so we'll come to that in a while.
Fintan's going to do an hour explainer on the structures of the Cork Hurling Championship.
Yeah, and the viewership will go. What about the Offaly Senior Final from the weekend? Very low scoring affair. St. Ryan's 1-11, Coolderry 12 points. Stephen Quirk, it was a scuttery goal, as you'll see. It was just a goal-mouth scramble, and he found a way to get it into the net. But that's brilliant for St. Ryan as a 3 in a row. What an achievement.
Yeah, it was a low-scoring game. You can definitely say that again. Like, 1-11 to 12 points is normally something you'd see at full-time, or at half-time, I should say, not at full-time. Like, very, very low scoring. An awful lot of chances missed on both sides. Wasn't at the game, but was chatting to a few different people that were there, and there was an awful lot of rooks in the game. And it looked like Coolderry were starting to play the game on their terms. particularly towards the end. So they actually led 11-8 at one stage, and they were a point up going into injury time. And this ball broke in around the square, and there was a lot of bodies there. But interestingly, I thought the most interesting thing about that video of the goal was that there was actually more Rhinus shirts in the picture than there were Coolderry shirts. You know the way the defenders fall behind the ball? There was actually more Rhinus guys. So they'd obviously thrown a bit of caution to the wind, or either that or they were going to try and get a high press on if Coolderry did win the ball or whatever. And in fairness to Stephen Quirke, the ball popped up and he pulled on it. It wasn't even a ground stroke. It was, it was kind of in the air, more of a volley kind of effort. Ended up in the net. And I think, what I said to you about the release valve earlier, Coolderry beat Rhinus in 2015 with a last-minute goal. Joe Brady was shipped up full forward, got a goal, broke Rhinus' hearts. They hadn't won a county final since 1993 at that stage. They get over the line in 16, beat us. They get over the line in 19 again, beating us in dramatic circumstances. They got over the line again earlier on this year. And you'll just see it here now.
Trying to bring it forward. Stephen Corcoran's out there. Ball isn't going to be finished. Trying to get the chance. Ryan's got a second chance.
So I'm just going to let that.
Ryan is now trying to break it loose. It's scrambling around in the square. Ryan is still having it, trying to bring it forward. Stephen Corcoran's out there. Ball isn't going to be finished. Trying to get the chance. Ryan's got a second chance.
I mean, it is amazing, but was there a handier point on just earlier before that? I wonder, when they were working the ball up the field. Obviously, they won 111 to 12, but rather than trying to knock in that goal, geez, in many situations, teams would just try and find a way to score a point to level.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the ball came in from that, but there've been that many wides hitting the game that it might have just been the easier option just to leave it in around the house and try and win a free or try and get a goal. And in fairness to them, they did. And they stunned Coolderry in the last minute with a goal. The flip of Coolderry stunning them with a last minute goal in 2015. And they just know how to win games now, in fairness to them. They beat Kilcormac by a point in the semi-final. They beat Coolderry by a last-minute goal in the final, and 3 in a row now. They're awaiting the winners of Mount Leinster Rangers and Ballyhale, and they've got plenty of time to get ready for that. That will be the second weekend in December, so they can do what they like this week and then get back by the weekend or next weekend and get back training and on the horse again. And they haven't covered themselves in glory in Leinster the last couple of times. Rathdowney beat them well in 2019. Oulart hammered them in 2016. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can make a bit of a charge. And we mentioned about Ken Hogan. It's a fair achievement, and came out with a good quote after. He just said that Theo English always said to him in Tipperary that county medals don't come in the post. You have to earn them. And they definitely earned it yesterday, in fairness to them.
And did you see when the players were posing for a photograph, the big huddle with the cup and all that, Hogan dives in on the ground in front of Jurgen Klinsmann style. Fair play to him there. Also, just a quick word on Clyda Gaels beating Tullamore. I mean, what a weekend for Tullamore. Heartbreaking in both situations.
Yeah, a very, very tough weekend for Tullamore. And Paul McConway, that plays with the footballers, he actually buried his dad on Saturday then as well, and then tugged out for the footballers on Sunday. I was briefly over at the cemetery in Kilbeggan on Saturday. I would just like to offer my condolences to him and his family. And it was tough on the fields for Tullamore over the weekend as well. They looked in control at one stage against Clyda Gaels, and then Dwayne Dunn got a penalty for Clyda Gaels. Liam Langton popped over a point at the end. Shane Dooley had a chance to level it from a sideline cut, but kind of just drifted wide, and it probably wasn't his best day from place balls, either frees or line balls that day, and that sends Clyda Gaels up to senior hurling for the first time. And it's a massive, massive achievement for them. The big names would probably be Liam Langton, I suppose, that plays at Offaly. His younger brother Conor, and Dwayne Dunn would be another very good player. And Clint Horn at centre back would be kind of a footballer and a hurler. He'd probably been around the Offaly football panel as well. But huge achievement for them. That was down in Brennan's Park on Saturday, and they'll really, really enjoy that one. A big deal for them to get up senior hurling. A club that was only Killorn and Killy and Raheen have all existed in separate entities, but a club that was only relatively recently formed. Massive for them to get up senior.
Yeah, we'll quickly talk about some of the changes on the Offaly backroom team. Tony O'Gregan is now on as a sports psychologist under Michael Fennelly. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Tony obviously has plenty of experience. I suppose the one thing you would say, he was with Limerick, I suppose, in 2019 when they were defeated. Now, that was after producing one of the best Munster final performances of that year. He obviously has loads of experience in that field. He's coming in there. They're obviously looking for, Offaly are going up to play Division 1 hurling, and they're going into the Joe McDonagh. They're obviously looking for a little bit of an edge. And then you have Barry Tehan, who was a former Offaly hurler. He was actually tugged out for Coolary yesterday. He's coming in as a selector to replace David Kenny. And it was funny just seeing even Mick Fenley, Johnny Kelly and Mick Kavanagh, the other manager and two selectors, they were on their way into Brennan's Park the other day. In fairness to Johnny Kelly, threw me a fiver for Burlotto tickets, so always have massive respect for that throws a few quid to the club. And as well as Tony O'Gregan, you have a strength and conditioning coach, Brendan Egan, who I think was with the Westmeath hurlers up until recently. He's involved now as well. So plenty of little changes there being made in the background, I suppose, to try and get them up to the next level.
Yeah, so in the Meath final over the weekend, Kildalkey beat Kiltale 18 points to 2-6. So, nice little victory there for Kildalkey, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, comprehensive enough in fairness to them. I think they go into, I'm not sure actually if they go into Leinster Intermediate or Leinster Junior, but, a pretty comprehensive win. I think most people thought that would have been an awful lot closer. And just an interesting one, Philip Lanigan from the Irish Daily Mail, who is a regular on the show, his Rathode side, I think that he's involved in the backroom team. They ended a 52-year famine by defeating Clyda Gaels, Scale Column Kill by 2-10 to 10 points in yesterday's minor hurling championship final. So I'm sure Phil is, I'm not sure if he's in the Monday club or anything today, but I'm sure he's having a good Monday after that.
Yeah, most certainly. We're going to bring in Fintan O'Toole of the 42 now. Fintan, how are you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. You had a dramatic enough weekend down at Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Yeah, absolutely. There was two lower grade finals on there on Saturday night, and then the kind of two main ones yesterday in the two different senior grades. Middleton, I suppose, the big story, managed to win their first title in 8 years in kind of yesterday's main game. I suppose a lot of drama at the very end. People that wouldn't have seen. Middleton probably dominated most of the game, but there was only 3 points in it. Heading into injury time, and Glen Rovers had one kind of late chance. Basically, the ball broke to substitute Conor Doris. Kind of, as someone said to me after, kind of everything kind of slowed down and looked like he was destined to put it into the net, but it kind of just hopped twice in front of him. He seemed to be kind of reaching for it, and he's kind of whipping on the ball, and the ball went narrowly wide. And Middleton held on for a 3-point victory, which was deserved, but kind of Glen Rovers' kind of batting qualities kind of kept them in it for long stages, and they almost kind of snatched a draw. Which would have been pretty dramatic if we'd gone to replays, given what happened to the previous weekend.
Yeah, there's no point in delaying this question. Ben O'Connor was talking about Conor Lehan. You were there, like a great performance, scored 13 points out of 24, scored 210 out of 215 against Sarsfields. And what was the quote that he said there? You saw again there today when the pressure was on, who was the out ball down to Conor Lehan, and Conor would win it. Look, if there's 8 or 9 better forwards than him in the county, we don't know anything about hurling. He's like, Ben O'Connor rarely minces his words, does he?
Yeah, no, he did, like, it was the obvious question to ask. I suppose anyone we were chatting to kind of do with Middleton yesterday, his impact, given it's just under 12 months now since he was kind of dropped off the Cork panel, since they made those changes. And it was an interesting day in that sense, because I suppose Aidan Walsh was kind of a casualty of those kind of squad changes as well. He played very well for his club, Cantork, when they won the Senior A final beforehand, but it really was Lehan's performance was very eye-catching. And yeah, Ben didn't hold back in his kind of judgment of him. Was absolutely raving about him. Was also fairly upfront in saying that probably one of the best things he said happened to us that he got dropped off it. I mean, Luke O'Farrell kind of touched on that as well. Said that ultimately, in years gone by, Middleton might have had 5 or 6 kind of county players, but they only had one this year involved in Sean O'Leary Hayes in the senior ranks, and how much it benefited to them. And kind of, he was just sensational yesterday, Lehan. Kind of a lot of credit due to him, I think, in that. After a setback like that at the age of 28, having been in the county setup since he was 18, kind of let go, came back this year. He was captain. There was a lot of talk about him going into the semi-final and final. He scored 10 points against Blackrock in the semi, scored 13 points yesterday. I think you were touching on it last week in your preview, that was this going to come down to kind of a scoring duel between him and Patrick Horgan. Ultimately, Horgan won that in the stats. If you look at it, 112 to 13 points, but Lehan probably had a bit more support. But just his all-around play, for anyone who didn't see it, like in the first half, was just absolutely superb. And I suppose there was a moment just before half time when you could see he was just really on song, that he got a ball underneath the north stand, basically just did this reverse pass flick over his shoulder, over his head without looking, took the Glen defender out of it and put it straight into Ross O'Regan's hand, and he launched it over. And then even in the second half, which was probably a bit more difficult for Middleton in the conditions, playing against the wind, obviously coming under pressure from Glen Rovers, he stepped up, hit some really big frees, was really, really good as a puck-out option. And I suppose, yeah, it was a natural thing to kind of wonder afterwards, what next for him. I mean, he's not 30 till next summer, but the flip side, and I think we touched on this, Verney, last week when we were talking about it, guys maybe kind of either retiring early or kind of coming back to the club at a certain age. I think there's no doubt it's been one of the biggest factors in driving Middleton over the line, because they've always had a lot of talent, but I'd say having him there all the time this year, making him captain, he's been their talisman, and just really, really stepped up to the plate yesterday.
Shane, can I just ask you, if you were manager, if you were Kieran Kingston and you were after dropping Conor Lehan, what would you do?
And it's a comment in as well here. Bert Giggles, Ash Tiger, you both seem to want to put me on the spot about Conor Lehan. I think he was there for a long, long time, got every opportunity going. And unfortunately, for every really high, and I think obviously that season of getting to the All-Ireland final, I think in 2016, roasted Tipperary down in Thurles. I'm pretty sure it was 2016. Had some unbelievable performances, but there was as many performances where we didn't get to see the best out of him over a decade as there was performances where he absolutely lorded it. I think he got every chance going, and if he was happy to be a squad player and be used, if and when you need him, I just wouldn't see him as a guaranteed starter. He got so many opportunities, and I'm not sure that he's done quite enough to be a guaranteed starter. So from my point of view, I think they've kind of made a rod for their backs at this stage. They've decided they're not going to go with him, and I don't think they will bring him back. And I think if they did bring him back, I think it'd be hard to leave him on the bench, and then that might create a bit of an issue if you did. So my thought would be, I'd say he had every opportunity. It didn't quite happen enough, so they'll move on without him. What do you think?
Finto, what would be your thoughts on that? Do you think they've made their decision now and they're going to stick to it, or it'd be I think it would be a big departure if they did change their mind, because it's not generally something that happens with managers. They usually toe a line and they stick to it. What's the likelihood, do you think, of seeing him playing for Cork again?
No. I mean, the other aspect is that Kieran Kingston's heading into the third year of his 3-year term. So maybe his strategy will be to just keep going with what he's been doing this year. If a new manager was to come in, maybe they might look at him again. Look, I think there's definitely something what Shane's saying there. Look, he has been inconsistent. That has been kind of said a lot about him. Even at club level at times, he can have an absolutely devastating 15-minute spell, can throw over 3 or 4 points. But the one thing I would say, in fairness to him yesterday, I just thought it was the consistency of his performance stood out. And maybe I suppose there's a bit of recency bias on this. You're kind of looking at the game and you're trying to figure out kind of maybe what's changed. But one thing I did notice about him, he would have been a big guy I would have thought of for a long time. He would kind of shoot from anywhere, and some of the shots could be absolutely outrageous and could go over. But it was very noticeable yesterday at times. His first instinct wasn't always to shoot. I mean, I think the best centre forward in the game is Cian Lynch, and the amount of times Cian Lynch, when he gets the ball, I think there was one time in the All-Ireland final this year, he was looking around for so many times in the second half to give the ball to someone, and then ended up popping it over. And maybe it's the Ben O'Connor coaching, but it was noticeable yesterday a couple of times. One of Lehan's points, he caught an absolutely brilliant puck out, little bit off balance, just steadied himself, just played a 10-yard pass over to Sam Quirk. Sam Quirk kind of got bottled up. Then he actually played it back to Lehan. Suddenly Lehan was in a yard of space, completely balanced, and he launched it over. I'm not so sure would he have been doing that a couple of years ago, would he have taken the shot first time. The other thing as well is that it was very noticeable that he was a big puck out option in terms of catching puck outs. And he was on Robert Downey, who will be Glen Rovers' biggest defender, was one of the defenders who started for Cork in the All-Ireland final, had a brilliant semi-final, was one of the biggest reasons that they won against the favourite Sarsfields. So, he really did kind of step up to the regard in that regard, step up to the plate in that regard. So, I mean, if you're looking for kind of signs of improvement, maybe there's a couple of things. But he was asked about it, I think, at the press evening, about it, and he said, "Look, I'm not looking beyond this game." Afterwards in his captaincy speech, he seemed quite emotional about it. But maybe that was the fact that it was 8 years since they'd won the county. Look, it must have been a kind of difficult as well experience for him personally, with what's gone on in the last 12 months. And maybe it does just suit him in terms of the club game, kind of being with it full time. And definitely, like Ben touched on that. Luke O'Farrell was pretty straight up on that about the benefit, and he's a guy who will kind of understand, I think, the county, club dynamic. He kind of came back into the club setup as well a couple of years ago after a good few years with Cork, and they were both just kind of raving about the benefits that the Middleton have had by having Lehan available to them full time.
It's an unbelievable sign of a lad's character as well, though, isn't it? To take that and just not take it lying down and come back I don't know, would you nearly say better than ever? Like, that's as good as he's played with Middleton, probably as good as he played in 2013. So it's an unbelievable sign of him.
Yeah, I wasn't there at the time, but a lot of older people talk about Brian Corcoran's performance in 1982 as the greatest Cork final individual display over the course of like a 60 minutes. And I remember Lehan in 2013, it was spoken about in that breath. And I think it's a fairly impressive sign. If we just look at it as a club player, if we take the county thing out for a minute, to kind of dominate 2 county finals like that, kind of 8 years apart, I think it's a fair old kind of testament to him. And I think definitely there was a sign yesterday that his game has developed. And I suppose he would have been the younger guy in 2013. He was still under 21 at the time. He's definitely the older guy that they're kind of feeding off, that all these kind of Middleton underage stars, like they would have won the county minor title in Cork in 18 and 19. So you have a lot of kind of guys coming through. But right from the start yesterday, you could see that he was on song. Like he hit the first point of the game, then he hit a free straight after. Like he had 7 to his credit, 5 from play by half time. As I said, it was a different type of game for him in the second half, but he still kind of did the business when it came to kind of getting his frees. And yeah, like Benji, he just couldn't be more, I suppose, praiseworthy of his attitude was interesting. He said everything we've asked of him this year. So you wonder, like Ben O'Connor came in last year. I suppose he was making excuses, but he said he felt he only had 5 weeks properly to work with the team for last year's championship, and they were kind of a big casualty in the group stages in Cork. He felt this year they'd have, a better run at it from the middle of May, kind of a full stint at it, and he felt Lehan was kind of central to that in terms of kind of they were able to shape their plans and aspirations for the year.
Can I just ask you something off the cuff? Sorry, Shane. Can I just ask something off the cuff now? And I just would like your opinions on this. So Conor Lehan is technically not wanted by Cork at the moment. So would there be any issue with players like that? Maybe like, I know it was controversial at the time, but Shawnee Johnson was not wanted in Cavan at the time by that manager. So like, is there any, like, should he be able to go and play with another county? Shane?
I mean, he is. Sure, if he moved county, like let's say he went to Dublin or whatever, moved up to Dublin for work or something like that, he definitely could do it. And like, there's a fair chance he'd make a massive impact with another county, because like the performances at the moment maybe suggest that a penny has dropped to some degree. I mean, like that consistency was a big problem, and you talked about it earlier, Fintan, about laying off the ball instead of taking on every score and opportunity himself. If he was kind of trying to solo through from the start of his career and set up goals and take points then when he had to take points, and just trying to be that creator, because like he's got such raw pace and skill, and like he's got pretty much everything. And maybe there's a bit of a Theo Walcott element where you're almost too fast for yourself and you're running into trouble before you actually just, stop up for a second and assess the situation by looking around. But like, it probably goes against the notion of a lad deciding, okay, my career is over at Cork, and look around for a county. That's very different to obviously transferring club because you're relocated or whatever, or for work. Yeah, it could happen. I mean, I don't see it happening with him per se, but like, there's no reason why players can't do it. It's just, I don't know. It'll probably just be the same as ever. Like, it'll happen in the odd situation.
I'd love to see what he could do with Kerry and how he could bring maybe Kerry hurling on. Just if he played with Kerry. That's just off the top of my head, because it is a bit of a shame and maybe a waste that he's not playing county hurling somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. Fintan.
I suppose the flip side of that, though, like maybe he would look at it like, would he be able to? I suppose we're in a split season situation now, so maybe it's different. Like, but would he be able to kind of make a much of an impact for his club and all that? And you'd wonder where his ambitions lie now, because I mean, 2013 Middleton won the county. They were expected to kind of go on and kind of dominate. They haven't won one since. Himself and a couple of the older guys, they waited a long time for their second medal. Talking to Ben O'Connor yesterday, like he's a guy with a very impressive Munster club record, and we know Cork teams don't have a good one over the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, this will actually be the first time that a Cork champion goes out in Munster since 2016, because of the fact that the divisional team won 3 of them, and obviously Blackrock didn't get the chance to play in the Munster club last year. So you wonder now, where his kind of thoughts and with that would kind of lie, and like when he looks at the kind of younger talent that they've coming through. I mean, Middleton had 2 guys yesterday. The goalkeeper, Brian Saunderson, and their centre-back, or their wing-back, Kieran Smith, both have been Cork minors last year, so they're both under 18 at the moment. Like, both played really, really well, made a big impact. So I wonder, is like Lehan looking around at that level of talent, and maybe thinking that this is kind of where my future lies. And similarly, like we've seen it a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, actually it's ended up being on both TG Carr, I think, final broadcasts, that Colin Fennelly kind of confirmed that he's focuses solely on the club game now, and Stephen O'Keefe did the same with Ballygunner. Like, I wonder, has club got to a certain level in some counties? If you're at you're at a big club and playing senior counties, is that enough for guys? Did that give them maybe enough satisfaction, and they gave their 7 or 8 years to the county, and they had enough of a run with it? I don't know. I'm speculating here. Like if Kieran Kingston picked up the phone to him in the morning, maybe he might think differently. But there's definitely no doubt about it that Middleton have indirectly benefited from the change that was made last December.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something in that players, if they're getting enough from playing for their club and they're contesting for titles and they feel like they're getting the best out of themselves, sometimes they're like, is it really worth it, all the extra effort of inter-county? Maybe I'm with a team that doesn't really, have a very good chance of winning something. So maybe I'll just throw my lot in with the club only and, be able to enjoy both sides of life. By the way, Fintan, just in terms of Cork teams in Munster, like Newtown Chandler won it in 2009. And I'm just trying to see what other teams have even gone on and got to a Munster final. And it's Glen Rovers in 2016. And they were beaten well enough by Ballier that day. What can you see a Cork team kicking on and actually making a real go of it? I think it's going to be against Kilmallock, isn't it?
Yeah, that's who they're playing next now in 3 weeks' time. I think they might have a shot off it. I suppose, not trying to kind of maybe make excuses for them, and look, I don't think they would have had an answer maybe to some of the kind of club sides they've played over the last couple of years, but definitely I think the 3 times in a row that a club lost the county final, I think it must be very difficult to try and pick yourselves up for a Munster club campaign. I'm not sure you get the buy-in from everyone, like, if everyone has the interest in it in terms of going, and that obviously didn't pay off. Obviously, no Cork side managed to win. Middleton did come close. Like they lost by 2 points to Ballygunner in the year that Ballygunner won Munster. So that wasn't a bad performance considering it was down in Walsh Park as well. They had a good old crack off it. 3 weeks is good in terms of, I think, you can kind of enjoy this week, have the celebrations, kind of bask in the glow of it, and then kind of get yourself right again. And I think, just talking to him yesterday, it was interesting. I think Ben O'Connor really will push it hard for them in terms of a coach, because he's been there and done that. Like, he's a very interesting record. 4 times as a player, he went into a Munster club campaign. He won 3 titles. As a coach, he went into the Munster Intermediate with Charleville a couple of years ago. He won that. So, like, in 5 campaigns, he's won 4 titles, And just talking to him yesterday, he just seemed like the kind of guy. He talked about the pressures off. He talked about the novelty of it. He would have played a lot of club sides over the years, Thurles Sars, Ballygunner, Adair, I just seemed to really, really enjoy it. And he was talking about trying to kind of, I suppose, part that line onto the players now, and particularly the kind of young players. Interestingly, he said, like, he was gone with actually Milton and Kilmallock played a challenge game in July. Didn't give the score, but said it was a really good encounter. And Graham Mulcahy actually touched on that in a press day last day. We were asking him, will you be watching the Cork final? Do you know anything about them? And he goes, yeah, we had a really good game with Middleton during the summer. So there's a bit of kind of familiarity, but that obviously was in July in good weather. It'll be a bit different in kind of mid-December. But in a wider sense, to me, the Munster landscape just looks a bit different this year. I think it's, to use that phrase, bonus territory for a lot of teams. I mean, Kilmallock's first county in 7 years, Middleton's first in 8. Maybe the pressure's off on a couple of these teams as opposed to your, the Pierce, 6 Mile Bridge, Ballygunner, these teams that are kind of repeatedly winning counties at a certain stage. When they get into Munster, they really want to have a crack off the provincial. So, like, the age profile of Middleton is good. Like, it is interesting the way they've changed their team since last year. Just to touch on that, like, is this Ben or the management or whatever, like, but say the team last year, Tommy O'Connell would have started full forward last year. They put him back centre back. Cormac Walsh was a wing forward. Now he's wing back. As I said, they brought in those 2 guys who were under 17 last year. They just seem to reimagine a couple of things, and it's definitely paid off for them. I mean, like, they got hammered in a group game by Sarsfields a couple of weeks ago. And they also, apparently, Luke O'Farrell was touching this yesterday. He said they got an absolute beating from the Cork under-20 team in August before the All-Ireland final. They played them in a challenge game, and he said that completely brought them back down to earth. And then Sarsfields brought them back down to earth again. So he said, I suppose maybe it's easy for teams to win counties to say this and look back, but he said those kind of couple of things helped. But yeah, I give them a shot. Tough going up there, obviously, but I think there is something to the fact that the Ben factor and I think the pressure being off is slightly a bit on them now.
Yeah, I was asking Verney there on Thursday about in Offaly, would they do a Miller Shield type thing? So for anyone who didn't hear us talking about it, this is where Colin Bonner is holding trials, where it's the north, south, mid and west, obviously no east in Tipperary. There's those divisional sides, and over the course of 3 weekends, starting at the weekend just gone, they're all going to play off, and it's going to be more or less trial games for Tipperary. Now, Cork geographically is just an absolutely massive county, way bigger than Tipperary even. Is that something that there's a couple of questions in this? Number one, do Cork do anything like this, or do you think, like, for an inter-county manager, he finds out more about a player watching a club championship than something like a Miller Shield and like, to be honest, would he even find out more about a player in club championship than even watching internal training matches with the inter-county team?
Yeah, the question whether they do it, they only really do it up until under 16. Then after that, then it kind of kicks back to the club. I suppose logistically, it'd just be impossible to manage because like Cork have enough hassle at the moment trying to actually just get the fixtures played with the amount of kind of dual clubs that are playing, and they also Cork obviously have the divisional concept, which wouldn't be obviously as big. Tipperary in terms of like Imokilly, obviously the East Cork combination team. That's I suppose that's technically a divisional side playing in the championship, but that's obviously not on a trial basis to kind of impress the county selectors. You also have college teams and all that, so it is kind of quite difficult. I suppose it is a flat county, in terms of the kind of the senior championship, the powerhouse is really kind of centred a lot really on the city and the east. In terms of the amount of clubs that are kind of partaking, that'll be where the vast majority of them would be at the moment in terms of kind of where the strength lies. Obviously, Newtown Chandler to the north kind of came strong there for a couple of years. Would it kind of benefit Cork? To be honest, I think the thing Cork have done over the last couple of years in terms of splitting the championships and going for numerous grades, I think that's really helped in terms of kind of spotting players and allowing players to develop. Every championship is really competitive now. So, there's 5 different grades in Cork, 2 senior grades and 3 different intermediate grades of 12 teams each. So it just means the kind of mismatches that kind of characterized it a couple of years ago are kind of gone. And, someone said kind of recently, if you're on it every year, you might have a chance of a county, but if you have one kind of a poor year, you could end up in the kind of relegation stakes. And that has happened to a couple of teams, kind of noteworthy teams, over the last while. But definitely, I think the splitting of championships allows teams to kind of develop at their own level. Just kind of maybe just offer one, it was interesting over the weekend in the kind of lower grades, a couple of younger guys that would have caught the eye of Cork on the 20 teams that started to come through with their clubs. And it was a stat that I kind of tweeted over the weekend. So Kieran Joyce would be kind of familiar to a couple of people. There's a lot of kind of hope in him, I suppose, because, I think we can all see Cork kind of need another couple of reinforcements at senior level. Kind of got them so far this year, but obviously with the way Limerick have raised the bar, there's a lot of kind of hope that some of those in the 20s to come through. But basically, he won his second county in the space of 3 months with his club, Castlemartyr. But since July, he's won 2 All-Ireland under 20 titles, a Munster under 20 title, and those 2 counties, playing in all 5 finals at centre back. And he was man of the match again on Saturday night in that'll be Intermediate A, and they're up to Premier Intermediate next year. So I wonder, is that kind of system working for Cork in terms of guys coming up through the different levels, and then he's only 19 now, he'll be 20 next year, playing Premier Intermediate hurling. That's 1 grade away from senior. Maybe that's kind of working for them in terms of guys kind of developing at a club level and kind of catching the eye of county selectors then, Yeah,
you're making him sound like a bit of a rival to John McGrath with his form at Loughmore there at the moment. Come here. Yeah, I was just going to say, can you take up that point, and then you might just tell us what happened with Kanturk over the weekend?
Yeah, so I suppose it's just the thing about Joyce, and it's just the way the fixtures kind of fell, I suppose, with the 20 and the 2020 and 21 seasons being merging, and he's just had a really good run, and maybe it's just a sign that Cork are kind of crying out a bit, saying for a centre back, that this guy's come along, and since about 16, 17 he's been kind of touted. But yeah, the other final yesterday was the Senior A final. The curtain raiser, Kanturk won it against Father O'Neill's. Kanturk won 9 points down at the second half water break of their semi-final and managed to come back with 14 men to draw level, and then won it after extra time, and then finished the job off yesterday. Obviously, the big thing with Father O'Neill's was Declan Dalton was out with a foot injury, and Ger Miller didn't start through injury, but he did come on. But I think Kanturk were kind of fully deserving of it. And just to touch on the Loughmore team, it is quite interesting. So again, I'm probably going to confuse people with the kind of different grades, but basically at different grades at intermediate level, Kanturk did a football and hurling double in 2017. They went on to actually win the All-Ireland in intermediate hurling, I don't know if you remember, subsequently the following spring. But they're basically in line to do it again now this year at higher grades again. So they'll be at the top level of senior hurling next year after winning yesterday, and they're in the Premier Intermediate football in a couple of weeks. And it's pretty much the same team. There's a load of Walshes, I suppose is the best to describe it, like Aidan obviously and his brother, and then there's kind of loads of cousins as well playing. So there is that kind of, I suppose, similarity, that parallel you could draw with the McGraths in terms of kind of the amount of surnames, or the kind of dominant surname, in the team sheet. And then just the interesting thing as well, coaching was yesterday, they had Frank Flannery involved, who is supposed to be familiar to people, not trying to rub it in, but 2015 obviously with Oulart in the Leinster club final. But he's just a very interesting kind of varied coaching career. He's won an All-Ireland Club Camogie title with Milford in 13. He's done the hurling stuff. been involved with a divisional outfit in Cork, do Hollow in football over the last couple of years. Won that yesterday. It's very kind of transferable skills, obviously. And I think Verney, we were chatting about it last week, but it was interesting that Sean O'Donnell got a mention in the captaincy speech, pretty specific from the captain Darren Brown, talking about his work with Limerick, the All-Ireland champions, and how we kind of, I think it's stats and analysis, I think is the kind of area of expertise, everyone kind of raised about his work, but he was listed amongst the Cantor backroom team yesterday. So interesting. And also, I think when your conference touched on it here, but yeah, Anthony Nash obviously had transferred this year to South Liberties. So it was probably going to mess with the name. Grantis Businkis, I think that's how you pronounce it, was the young guy who was in goal for Cantor and very, very solid. But like on paper, like they have a lot of players, like Darren Brown played for Cork, Brian O'Sullivan under 20 this year. They are very, very strong. But just, I suppose, finally, just similar to the Lehan thing, interesting, Aidan Walsh, let go from Cork, but he's had a big, big impact for his club this year. One county medal in the bag and maybe a second to follow in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, why do you think it never happened for him, Michael? I put it to you. For Aidan Walsh at the county level, is it as simple as just jumping between both codes kind of caught up with him?
I definitely think it wouldn't have helped anyway. This is no slight on him. I wouldn't have thought he was the most natural player, that he was more of an athlete that played hurling. That's just my view. And when you're not focusing specifically on hurling in that case, it can be difficult. It can be difficult to kind of do really well, particularly at county level. Now, there were times, I remember during the league, he even had a spell in a full forward. I remember him doing a lot of damage against Kilkenny in the league game. There were spells where he was out on the wing forward as well. He was very good. He was one of their best players when they beat Limerick in the open round of the Munster Championship in 2019, when Limerick were All-Ireland champions as well. And they really went physical and went toe-to-toe with them. But a lot of I found that Aidan Walsh's, the most difficulties were when the ball was around his feet. It's a really natural hurler to be able to get the ball into their hand really, really quickly. And that was probably something maybe that he struggled with a small bit. But as regards athleticism, he had it. As regards having a paw, he had it. Maybe not the most natural striker, particularly off his left-hand side. He wouldn't have been as natural. On his right, he would have been. But focusing on one code, i.e. focusing on hurling, definitely would have had a better chance of prospering at senior county level anyway. Yeah,
to me, he at his prime, let's say around 2014, when he was in All-Star territory, coming up to all the way up until they played Tipperary in the All-Ireland semi-final, and Tipperary absolutely battered Cork that day, as I'm sure you remember, Fintan. I hate bringing it up. But like, he back then was at the peak of his powers. I think he played wing back or maybe midfield that day. But when he was at that level of athleticism, imagine him playing wing back in its current guise, where you're driving forward a la Kyle Hayes and Calum Lyons. He's probably tipping 30 now at this stage. Maybe that's still in him, maybe it's not, but either way, we're probably not going to see it at this point. But there was very interesting drama in a Dublin playoff over the weekend. So for people who don't know this, to get through to the Leinster Intermediate Club Championship, what you have is the Senior B champions, who are Castleknock, up against the Intermediate champions, who are Fingalians. And the winner of so they had a playoff there over the weekend, and the winner goes through to the Leinster Intermediate Club and will play Naas next Saturday. Castleknock 123, Fingalians 220, went to penalties. Castleknock won 4-1 on penalties. That's some way to go through to a Leinster Intermediate Championship, Fintan.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you mean, but this debate kind of surfaced over the weekend, and it's surfaced a couple of times with kind of the football semi-finals. Is this too cruel a way to finish? And I don't know, is this a mind shift change that we need in the GAA? I've seen people say,
there's a million and different ways to lose during the middle of a match. One player makes a mistake, referee, whatever. Look, penalties. I think it's a bit of fun.
I think so too. And it's just the one thing I find is young people say it's a very tough way to lose. I don't think there's any easy way to lose. I think if you played the golden score, as some people suggested, I think that would be pretty brutal as well, because someone could make one small slip up. Glen Rovers, the way they lost yesterday with the goal chance at the end. I mean, that wasn't exactly an easy way to lose, But obviously, you didn't see this game referring to the Dublin, but I was quite interested in the standard of penalty taking, I thought, in the Kerry football semi, and I know you touched on it earlier. But just the quality of them. And in fairness, it was interesting, the RT commentary. Darren O'Sullivan was straight in talking about the townies element, and a lot of them would have kind of soccer background, and it definitely showed with some of them with the kind of technique. But I think just the penalties thing, it'll just take another maybe season or two, and I think it's just going to be complete the norm. Even the novelty of it is slightly gone now, isn't it? Because there's nearly one kind of every weekend at the moment. And I suppose obviously the calendar just doesn't allow for kind of replays, but it's definitely interesting. Even like you hear managers referencing it now that they're practicing it, like it has been incorporated into their training. There was a friend of mine in charge of a Cork club team, and he said they kind of started practicing it, but he just realised like the whole thing of kind of practicing the warm up the run up is just absolutely almost irrelevant really at a training session, isn't it? Like it's more, you're better off just getting lads to just take them and focus on the technique and just hope that they aren't too I suppose uncomfortable by the circumstances if it's in a game situation, if the crowd is there and all that, having to kind of walk up to them.
Yeah, I only ever took a penalty once in a competitive game, and it was soccer. It was a a county cup semi-final around 2005, and I did have nerves going up to take it. Now, luckily, it went in. I mishit it, and it clipped the underside of the crossbar and went in. But I was also robbed of penalties in the Senior 2 Dublin football final over the weekend. Padder O'Kofig Byrne knocked the ball into the net with the last play of the game. It was going to penalties otherwise. Now, my number one choice would be play extra time and then golden score, or else two 5 minutes or something like that. But I think golden score would be, I'd really enjoy the drama of that. Penalties would be my next option. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't mind the golden score. I have no issue with penalties when, like, that game, that Castleknock-Fingalians game, they had to get a result. Like, they're playing next Saturday. There's no time for a replay. They had to get a result. I think when you have to get a result and time is against you, I've absolutely no issue with penalties. Golden score would be very interesting. In hurling, it could be over in 15 seconds. Could be over from the throw-in. And
the ref doesn't blow the whistle either, Michael, actually, just to take you up on that point. Because, like, if you look at Thurles Sarsfields against Loughmore last week, I'm fairly sure Conor, like when Paddy Creedon got the ball and he was soloing forward, he could have given a free, but I think the referee was like, I can't give a free and decide this game. And nearly the ball going out over the sideline, he was like, I better blow it up now.
Yeah, so, I thought Paddy Matter was going to get pulled for a free at the very end as well. He kind of dived in across someone, but sometimes you tend to get away with a bit more at the end of a game. The most interesting part of all of this, like, I presume, Shane, you were a Julian Dix style penalty taker. Like, someone had it up on Twitter there recently. Like, I ended up going down a rabbit hole and watching like all great Julian Dix penalties, like the power that he generated, and it was just one route down the middle, nowhere else. And if you were brave enough to get in its way, you're a brave man.
I would never have blasted it. I wouldn't have trusted it. So it was always shaped to go left, side foot right.
Yeah, we were told. I don't know. Could be the most ridiculous theory of all time. We were told, look at a point in the goal and hit the opposite point in the goal. So I'd look bottom right and then go bottom left. Worked a couple of times.
Hey, the Galway semi-final was on over the weekend. Sorry, do you want to jump in, Fintan?
Yeah, just on the power thing, it's worth checking out. You could maybe send you the link after. But from the Castlehaven Bars penalty shootout last week, I've never seen a penalty in GAA the way Damien Callahan hit it. It was very much the Julian Dix style. Or do you remember the one Kevin Pressman was the Sheffield Wednesday keeper in the 90s? He kind of hit one like that. But it kind of basically went straight at John Kearns almost. But the power, it went so fast. If his hand had actually hit it, looked like he could have done some serious damage. But I've never seen like the way he actually hit it with the speed and the power, and he just absolutely lamped it. But it's worth checking out in terms of what Verney said there with the kind of Julian Dix strategy.
Fintan, would you have much time for players missing penalties, considering it's only 11 metres out? You know, it was obviously moved in several years back.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing with the Gaelic football ones that I've seen the last couple of weeks. There was only one missed in Kerry at the weekend and the same Cork the previous weekend. Like, it's definitely very much advantage penalty taker in football at the moment, whereas in hurling, maybe it's a bit different in terms of the kind of technique. And all that. I think, what did you say? Was it 4-1 in that Dublin game you're referring to over the weekend?
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So obviously, I think definitely there is a bit of an advantage in football. And what I've actually loved, I did see RT on Saturday night kind of did that behind the view of the penalty taker when they were hitting at that camera angle. And I think when you see it like that, you kind of get a sense of, I think it's definitely much the advantage of them. And even like for the Austin Stacks one, it was noticeable. The St. Brendan's keeper, he was kind of guessing the right way, but he just doesn't react quick enough because obviously it's that just a bit further in. So yeah, I think once you kind of keep the head and if you kind of cope with the pressure of the situation and all that, you definitely have a lot going for you in the circumstances. The fact that it's that three yards out, isn't it, further in?
Yeah, so St. Thomas's are going to be back in a Galway final. They really did batter Gort. Now, The game was obviously put back because of the COVID situation there. Don't know how many of the Gort players were still suffering ill effects. Maybe one or two. I'm not entirely sure. But the scoreline was fairly comprehensive, Michael. 420 to 9 points. And geez, it almost feels like hand out the cup to St. Thomas's again.
I wouldn't say that now yet, but they definitely dealt with this in a real no-nonsense manner. Like, it's an absolute battering. I definitely fancied them to win the game. I didn't think they'd be winning by anything like this. They led 110 to 5 at half time, and while the Gort attack was struggling to make any sort of an impact, there was a savage impact being made up the other end. Oisin Flannery, Conor Cooney, I think he ended up at 110. James Regan got a goal as well. Oisin Flannery had 1-2, Damien McGlynn 1-1, Éanna Burke chipped in with a couple, David Burke got one, Cottle Burke a couple as well. Whereas Gort only had 3 scores and only hit 3 points from play. You'd have to say this is different than other years where Thomases have won tight knockout games. They battered, was it Kilkenny in the quarter-final? They've battered Gort in the semi-final. Their only worry would be that they could potentially be a bit undercooked, maybe going into a county final against Clarenbridge, who have had a tough enough passage to get here, but they're definitely huge favourites. And as I said before, they're eyeing an All-Ireland semi-final nearly already at this stage, and we're eyeing it from a long way out. The only worry from their point of view that would be that maybe, and what Clarenbridge will hold on to, is Clarenbridge have loads of momentum, and maybe Thomas's eyes are a bit further down the line, and maybe they won't be. There might just be a tiny bit of complacency there, but that's hope, I'd say, more than expectation.
A reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. If you want to get any of the gear we're wearing here or any of the stuff on screen there, use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Please do subscribe to the channel, bottom right-hand corner, absolutely free to do it, and helps grow the channel. And if you want to get the audio podcast, patreon.com/OurGame. And just a reminder, if you're looking for Christmas presents, Fintan O'Toole did write the Myler, a family memoir, and that's a handy little thing to pick up for Christmas. Put that in as I'd say the main thing filling up the stocking, not just the stocking filler. It's the main part of it, Fintan.
Yeah, we're all about the plugs every week here, Shane. It's only a few weeks to go, so it's very important that we keep them going, you know.
I love the way, Shane, when you bring up the picture, it actually covers Fintan's head perfectly, and then you can just see it, bring it up again. Yeah, there she is again. Beautiful.
It's more important to get that front image out, you know.
Yeah, that'll be flying off the shelves heading into Christmas. Right, so we did a power rankings a few weeks ago, Fintan. You weren't involved in it, so I suppose your hands are washed up.
You're absolved of all blame here, Fintan.
Yeah, of the disgrace that it is. So this is what we decided. What was this, about 4 weeks ago now? There was still a load of club championships ongoing. I'll bring it up on the screen here. So we had Shamrocks of Ballyhale in as number 1, so I think we're happy enough to stick with that. Ballygunner, St. Thomas's at 3, Schlockneil at 4, Kilmallock 5, Coola 6, who are knocked out, Killadangan knocked out, Napeershig knocked out. At the time they were knocked out, but we kept Napeershig in there because we just felt they'd done enough done in recent years. Blackrock knocked out at the county semi-final stage, and Mount Leinster Rangers, who remain, they're in there also. Are we looking like apes there, Fintan?
You'll have to find out the exact date of when was this done, like, you know, in terms of stage, like, you know, 6 Mile Bridge weren't enough for you for the top 10. That was one thing I was wondering, like, having won, were they going for 3 in a row clear this year, or were they gone at that stage when you did it, like, you know?
Oh no, they could have just been gone. Yeah, I think
they were gone. Yeah,
they were knocked out in the quarterfinal. I'm going to look up the date that we did this, because it was just before. So it would have been, I think it was just about a month ago at this stage.
Before the tip semi-final, Shano, I think.
Yeah. Because that was the 30th of October when that was played. So it would have been the 27th or 28th of October when we did it. So yeah, just about a month ago, 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, we can absolve you slightly so. But like, the interesting thing, I suppose, is like Ballyhale is still very, very dominant in Leinster so far. Obviously, you know, winning 4 in a row in Kilkenny. Schlockneil kind of still standing in Ulster. St. Thomas in as, you know, the Connacht representatives in terms of they're in the Galway final. Obviously favourites for that with all the form they've possessed. But it just seems to have been a bit of a sea change in Munster, hasn't there? You know, in terms of the 5 counties that are competing in the senior championship, only Ballygunner have retained, and you know, like 6 Mile Bridge were gone, Napeershig were gone. You kind of mentioned Blackrock. I suppose I'm kind of touching what I kind of saying earlier. Then it definitely does look like there's kind of a spot for someone to maybe come along now. Depending on who wins the tip final at the weekend. You'd imagine if Thurles get to it, there's a lot of kind of residual, maybe slightly regret there from, is it 1 from 7 or 1 from 8 in terms of the careers of the likes of Paddy Maher, Michael Carroll and that, in terms of Munster campaigns, converting them. Loughmore then I suppose it'll be just fascinating to see how they do like Cracklow in 2014 in terms of kind of juggling them both and trying to go on. But yeah, that's the interesting thing. Like in the space of a few weeks, how much the makeup has changed in Munster. And in fairness, like the champions that have emerged, like it's not like they're kind of complete novices either. They've all kind of won counties in recent enough times. But I do think it seems to me that there's a big opportunity there, and maybe the most pressure is going to be on Ballygunner. And it's not an easy thing for them in the sense that they haven't played for so long, and similar to what Rapparees and Wexford are facing into this weekend, try to cope with that. I haven't heard if they've been involved in challenge games or anything like that. I presume they might have been doing something, but it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of cope with that because the gauntlet was kind of laid down for them by a lot of opposition managers. And I noticed that in Waterford. I think like Michael Ryan said straight after the semi-final they should win the All-Ireland club, and that was only their county semi-final. And I think Peter Creeley said something similar enough, maybe after Roe had been beaten in the county final. So kind of all eyes are on them, and it's where are they actually, just to refresh my memory there, they're in the top three, are they?
Ballier in the quarter final, yeah, and they're second at the moment, yeah.
Second at the moment, yeah. So they are probably the ones, from a long way out, given that they've obviously won so many Waterford counties, that the Munster is their ambition and probably further afield after that,
Yeah, so I think it's 4 of the 10 are no longer in the championship. Now, to be fair, as we said, Na Piarsaigh weren't in there anyway. When we picked it, it was more of a legacy thing of having them in there, and the fact that so many of their players are still looking well. We're going to have to rejig that list on the fly here. But James S says, if Thurles won five All-Irelands in a row, Shane would have them outside the top 10. So apparently I'm anti-Thurles. This is the thing now.
I think it's real. Yeah, I think it's real, and you're feeding into it nearly most days, and you'll probably feed into it on Thursday's show when you preview the tip final, I'd say.
Pure Hatchet says Ballier wouldn't bait Snow off her up. Now they're going to have Tony Kelly out, so that definitely is going to hamper them. Emily89 says the 2 times Clarenbridge have won county titles is when a team is going for 4 in a row. Athenry, won Portumna in 2010, so good omen for them. So where would you make, are we going to change any of the top 5 there, Fintan, as far as you're concerned? I'll bring it up on screen again. Would you be looking at, right, is it Thurles, Sarsfields, Middleton, any of these teams?
Yeah, that's probably the one choice, maybe just number 5, on the basis, and that's not kind of, with respect to Kilmallock, but at the moment, would you kind of rank them the same as whoever wins in tip? And maybe Middleton at the moment, because I suppose they haven't won it in a while. I know they've still have a fair bit of the team that won in 2015 in the All-Ireland Senior Club final. Like the Limerick Championship is a kind of a strange one. It's kind of dominated by 3 or 4 clubs, but is it a very, very competitive championship? It seems like I think it's the same 4 semi-finalists as it for the last, I don't know how many years, but obviously they managed to come out of that, and obviously Limerick have produced kind of teams that got to the Munster and the All-Ireland finalists, but at the moment I'd be ranking Ballygunner as the best in Munster, and I think of the other 4, you could kind of split them all fairly evenly of the other 4 teams in Munster in terms of letting them in there. But the fact that you're throwing Thurles into the equation there, is that your favourites as the tip final replay that you've announced already? I
actually don't know. I genuinely don't know, and I don't know which of Loughmore or Thurles would do better if they came out. It's so hard. Michael, any thoughts on that? I mean, I find it really, really hard to decide that one.
Well, it's going to be very hard for Loughmore to play Munster club in both codes. And you'd imagine that would, you can do it. They're doing it at county level at the moment within Tipperary, but it'd be very hard, if they win the county hurling this weekend and they're playing football the following weekend and then they're playing hurling again the next weekend, that's going to be really, really difficult. And now they have John Matter could be out for the hurling. And maybe these things will start, these little muscle injuries will start kind of coming now. I'm happy. Someone said there that Schlockneil should be lower down. I'm very happy with Schlockneil at 4, I have to say. And I'm happy with the top 4 still and the order of them. It's just thereafter that I'd be wondering. I think you can only have 1 Tipperary team in. So that's it. Yeah. So to me, I'd be going for Loughmore anyway. I probably would have them down the lower end of the 10 as well, though, because of the dual issues that I foresee them seeing when they get to provincial level. But I'd be stumping for Loughmore probably at 8 or 9, I'd say.
What do you think, Fintan? Do you think Thurles or Loughmore are more likely?
I think Loughmore now on the basis because they won yesterday. I just wonder psychologically is the pressure a little bit off them, because they're obviously lauded all over the country, and it's almost become a cliche, you know, this unbelievable jewel club or whatever. But it's not really a record they wanted to be going into over the 2 seasons, the 2 COVID seasons, having lost three county finals and trying to win a 4th title. But at least they have a piece of silverware now already in the bag. So I wonder, does that just help them a little bit and kind of act as a little bit of a pressure release? I was just one of the things as well about them in Munster. I remember a couple of times over the years, Noel McGrath has kind of referenced it. Wasn't there, but like they got caught very badly by the Piercy. I think it was 14. Whenever the last time that they were in actually in the Munster hurling, they kind of nearly had the game won, and I think they conceded 2 goals late on to someone like David Dempsey. I think Noel McGrath called it one of the worst defeats up there with any county defeat he'd ever suffered in terms of having a game won and kind of stolen from the end. Now you'd probably say like maybe I think this interview might have been done before last year's Tip County finals, and obviously those were 2 pretty heartbreaking defeats as well. Like, you know, but like the thing Verney makes is a good point, because just they're not going to have a fortnight break now at any stage. You know, I mean, if they keep winning, the next weekend free they'll have will literally be Christmas Day, because there's no Munster club action then for that day, and then it'll go into January. Like, you know, so I mean, Cracklow is the example in putting in 2014. It kind of caught up with them. I suppose people look at Shockneil, but you just have less rounds of Ulster hurling to look into. But also, like touching on what Verney's saying there about Shockneil, maybe it's going to be benefit to them this year now, the fact that they only have hurling completely to focus on, and they've been out of the Derry football final for a while. I think it's Dunloy in a couple of weeks in the Ulster semi, and then Ballycran in the final. And there won't be as long a wait this year, you know. And obviously they put it up to Ballyhale a couple of years ago, you know. So I think it's fair enough to put them in the top 4, given their record over the last couple of years.
So what changes are you making, Verney? I think we need to drop any team that's gone, including the Piercy. I think we need to drop them out of this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we honoured Na Piarsa's legacy by having them in the top 10, but they've got to go now. So then you're basically getting rid of 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I have to say I was happy that Mount Leinster Rangers stayed in at 10, just because like you were pushing for maybe a Borrisalee or someone from Tip, teams that are no longer like in the championship. But you know what I mean? So I'm happy that Mount Leinster are still there.
Eventually I booted both of my teams out in terms of like I brought Kula down from like you had him in at 2 or 3, and I said no, it's not quite going that way at the moment. Did I not sort of readily agree that I wasn't sure Borrisalee would win the county title this year?
The one on Kula, I would definitely put my hand up on that one. I was only going on based on what we have seen and what they've won over the last while. Your intel was a little better there, and you were able to foresee the future a small bit. The one with Borrisalee is just, yeah. At least they've franked the form. I'm happy with that. But we need to probably, if I'm looking at teams that are going to come into the equation, Ballyea minus Tony Kelly, I can't have them in the top 10. I just can't. I honestly think Ballygunner will win by more than 6 when they played him in that quarter final. Middleton could potentially come in at the tail end of the 10, and other county titles. If I'm honest, I'm not going to put Rhinus into the mix. Clockballacalla in Laois is an interesting one. I think they're on TV on Saturday night against Rapparees, which I think they'll win. And Fintan, you were asking whether Ballygunner and Rapparees had played any practice games. They played each other there a few weeks ago, and right. Ballygunner gave them an awful hiding apparently. So Rapparees are going to have to turn it around fairly quickly. I don't see them doing it. I think Clockballacalla are probably just outside the top 10. I would have Middleton inside it, probably replacing the Rockies at 9, Shane, if I'm honest.
Yeah, would you have Kilmacud above them? Fintan, you feel free to jump in on that one too.
Maybe slightly on the basis that they have a bit of Leinster experience, Kilmacud. Or well, just you tell me now. The last time they won in 14, is there much of that kind of team, or are we looking at a completely kind of new side? In terms of because the one thing about Middleton is that they've had 2 runs in Munster, so I would put them in the top 10, but you kind of just have to kind of prove yourself that bit further. Like they lost to 6 Mile Bridge in 13 in a Munster semi-final, and then they lost obviously to Ballygunner a couple of years ago. But like as I said, they ran Ballygunner pretty close, a team that had got to the Munster Club final, or they won the Munster Club final subsequently, and ran Ballyhale close to the Ireland semi. So at the moment I think I'd be putting them in the top 10. But yeah, I think you have to. Unfortunately, anyone who's not involved in a county championship in these 2024 rankings, you know, we can't be relying on legacy achievements here, you know, when we're ranking these. Shane,
I'd have Crokes up high, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Crokes are not easily the second best team in Leinster, but I think they're the second best team in Leinster, and they'll get all the way to a Leinster final. And if anybody is going to beat Ballyhale, it will be them.
Well, let's just decide first off. Like, we're agreed that Shamrocks are number one. Yeah, I mean, that's not up for debate. I think are we all agreed that Ballygunner are number two, including you, Fintan?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Are we happy with St. Thomas is at number 3?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Schlockneil at 4, Kilmallock 5.
Not sure about Kilmallock 5.
Fintan, what do you think?
Yeah, that's the one for me. Like, I don't think, between the tip champions Middleton at the moment, I think you would kind of rank pretty similar enough. Like, just one thing about Verney saying there, I open the question, but I think the draw is actually will be Ballyhale v Kilmacud in a semi. So then is it Clock and v Rapparees against Rhinus?
Clock against Rapparees. Rhinus play the winners of Mount Leinster Rangers and Ballyhale in the semi-final. Yeah, the Offaly champions have gotten the plum draw. They're through to the semi-final, but their punishment is probably playing Ballyhale.
Right. So, like, of the four, of say Clock, Rapparees, Raharney, Kilmacud, you're saying Kilmacud to get to the final against Ballyhale?
Yeah, it'd be Kilmacud. I'd probably say Clock Ballycollar would be second in that, but I'd still say Kilmacud would be 3 to 4 points better than them.
Yeah. And realistically, we probably all feel that Ballyhale are going to dismiss Mount Leinster Rangers straight away. So in some ways, because Ballyhale are such outrageous favourites to win that, and you see the least chance of a shot there, that probably drops Mount Leinster possibly even below teams that we think they could potentially beat, like a Raharney or whatever, because they're such outsiders in this game.
Yeah, and the fact that they gave the game was put back a week. I don't know if it was specifically to accommodate TJ Reid's wedding, but the game was supposed to be a day or two after TJ Reid's wedding. It's now a week after, so you'd have to say that definitely significantly lessens their chance of winning that. So yeah, I wouldn't have too much issue with them dropping outside the 10. I definitely I think Middleton will give it to Kilmallock. I think that's a 50-50 game. So there's no way for me that Kilmallock can be as high as they are. And I wouldn't have Crokes far off 5 or 6, to be honest.
I'd be happy to go with Kilmacud Crokes at 5.
Yeah, I think them winning the county final and in the way that they did it, I think the world is their oyster. I think they could go really far. Okay,
well then the tip champions then. So we haven't decided if it's Thurles or Loughmore just yet, but do they come with the way the draw is working out? They're going to play the winners of Waterford and Clare. So
I think they're at home for that. So it's in Semple Stadium,
the good field it's called.
On the basis of Ballygunner, if you're going to say you think Ballygunner beat Ballya, I think whoever will win tip will have a good crack off them in that semi-final, and given the record of tip club teams over the last while has been, it's been definitely better than the Cork equivalents of the Munster Club Championship. So I'd nearly be putting the winners of that, whoever you think it's going to be. I'd probably be going Loughmore, just about. So maybe them at 6. Still be putting Middleton in your top 10. Are you putting Ballya outside your top 10?
I think so. And I'll be honest with you, I think no matter who the Tipperary champions are, they could be playing Ballygunner in their back garden and they're still not going to beat them.
Wow. Sure, Ballygunner and SARS had so many classic games over the years. Games that went to extra time and everything.
Or are we talking about over the years or are we talking about this year?
Jeez, that's ignorant enough stuff there.
At least they won't be accusing me of being windy anyway.
So we're going to put the tip champions at 6, are we?
I'm not happy with that, no.
No?
No. I'm not happy with that. They're down at they're down around 8 to 9 for me now, to be honest with you.
For me, on the basis of...
For me?
Okay, right. I think that is a fair point, to be fair. A good point here from Adrian McGrath, or certainly a strong point. Ballya are unlikely to beat Ballygunner, but if Ballygunner have any softness of attitude, Ballya have a powerful defence, an incredibly athletic midfield and a half-forward line and 90% free taker. So that's a fair point. And also, I know you mentioned Ballygunner played the Raps, but geez, they've been sitting on the sideline waiting and all. It couldn't, if Loughmore got through, it couldn't be more poles apart in terms of probably playing 19 weeks in a row at that stage for Loughmore versus playing first time in God knows how long. It was definitely a different season that Ballygunner were playing in because it was very sunny that day, wasn't it?
Totally different, yeah. Yeah, completely different.
Okay, so we still have to figure out the order here of Middleton. So Middleton versus Kilmallock in a semi-final. Who are you favouring there, Fintan, as the team who's just watched Middleton? Do you think they can beat Kilmallock?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And do you fancy them?
a lot of this stuff is very much flip of a coin at the moment. Like I don't see the gap compared to, you know, when the PRC played Blackrock a couple of years ago, or I don't see that amount of gap the way it was when, like, you know, or 6 Ridge with Conor Lehan. Like, you know, Munster just strikes me as a bit more even this year. I do agree. I think Ballygunner will win it on the basis at the moment, but like Middleton Kilmallock to me is a complete toss for a coin game, to be honest, you know. But it's just the way the draw works out, the fact that you're then into a Munster final, which will be on, pretty sure it's after Christmas, isn't it? Like, so you have another 4 weeks to develop. Like, so, like, to me, that's an absolute kind of a game changing, you know, for both clubs in terms of how your season can suddenly take off. Maybe the fact that Middleton, like, schedule might have worked a little bit more in their favour 3 weeks. I mean, you go on with I know, I'm not saying it was like very sunny conditions, whatever, but that was October 20th, wasn't it, Kilmallock? It was a game like I said last week. A few of the Limerick hurlers obviously they went to Barbados, I think, the week after for the team holiday. They come back maybe refreshed and ready for a Munster club campaign, but doubt they've had kind of too many challenge games. So maybe the momentum might swing it for Middleton up there. So
would you have them as high up as number 6 ahead of the Tip champions?
No, I'd be going to Tip champions 6 at the moment.
Okay.
With Kilmacud 5, and then be filling it out from there with Middleton, Kilmallock. It's probably another Leinster side deserves a shout. Yeah. Are we discounting Claren Bridge?
Well, they are still in it. Like Dunloy.
Yeah.
Are we discounting them?
Yeah.
That's a massive Ulster semi-final. That is big, and I do think Slaughtneil will marginally win it. But on the basis of that, if we have Slaughtneil up 4th, you know, does another Ulster side, particularly Dunloy, deserve representation in the 10? Potentially so. I wouldn't have Clough-Ballacalla a million miles from the top 10 either now. They're literally hovering 10 or 11 for me.
Lads, some of you are going to have to call it.
They've won 2 county championships in the last, 10 weeks, I'd say. And I think they'll beat Rapparees. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, I think they'll beat Rapparees also. But, like, would you put Dunloy ahead of them?
To be honest, Shane, I haven't seen enough of Dunloy. That's a lot of it. I prefer to be wrong, but go with a team that I've seen more of, rather than just make a blind judgment. I have seen very little of the Antrim Championship. That's just been honest.
Like, they've won a 3 in a row, and like, if you look at some of the class players they have, Paul Shields, Keelan Malloy, Conal Cunning, Sean Elliott, I think it might be pronounced. They do have a lot of class there. And, like, do you think Dunloy are more likely to win an Ulster Championship, or are the likes of a Clough-Ballacalla, Raharney, Mount Leinster more likely to win Leinster? Realistically, it's going to be Ballyhale, isn't it?
Yeah, Dunloy are far more likely to win a provincial title. It would take a couple of massive results for any of those teams you mentioned to win Leinster.
Yeah, okay. So to me, that puts Dunloy higher up the pecking order here than the likes of Raharney or Clough-Ballacalla.
Well, I'm okay with that, because if I look at this in 3 weeks' time, I want to see 8 or 9 teams that are still going. Do you know what I mean?
So are Mount Leinster dropping out on the basis that we feel very strongly that Ballyhale are going to beat them?
Yeah, I think that's kind of fair enough, to be honest with you. Do we think Mount Leinster are the second best team in Leinster at this moment in time? I think Kilmacud are the second best team in Leinster. Yeah. So I'm okay with that.
And are you happy to go with Middleton ahead of Kilmallock?
Yeah, it's kind of a toss of a coin, I think, as Fintan says, to be fair. It's toss of a coin.
I put them both out. So if I was doing it, I'd put, say, Tip champion 6, and I might go 7-8 Middleton Kilmallock, because I think whoever wins, that's just the way the draw. Like, it's just get over that game, and just the whole schedule kind of opens up to you. You're into a Munster final after Christmas, that will be played. I think we're probably all kind of thinking Ballygunner will get the job done on Sunday. The fact that it's up there is the slight thing about it. But obviously the big thing was a couple of years ago when it was that draw. Ballier had Kelly. I'm pretty sure Desi Hutchinson wasn't playing then, so like Ballygunner have gained him since then, you know, and I think they're probably maybe a couple of other kind of younger players as well. So maybe in a kind of bit of a stronger shape. But probably, are you thinking of Clough in the top 10 then? Clough and Dunloy to round it off?
I actually would put Ballier as a better chance to win Munster than some of the other teams that we're talking about in Leinster. Because I just think I mean, it's so likely that Shamrocks are going to win Leinster, and then I think Croke's number 2. But like Ballier to do what they've done without, I mean, they don't have Tony Kelly, obviously the unbelievable game breaker, but they still have quality all over the field, and a team that got to an All-Ireland final and the team that came back in Munster, even though they were down so many players, you know, they had a huge turnover of players. So to me, right, so my 10, and just stop me when you think I have it wrong. So
stop you straight away.
Yeah. Shamrocks, Ballygunner, Thomas's, Schlockneil, Kilmacud, Crokes, Tip Champions, Middleton, Kilmallock, Ballier, Dunloy.
I'd probably switch Dunloy and Ballier. If you're going to put Ballier in, like I'll be honest, I think Ballier are out this weekend. Like I think they're gone this weekend. Barn, I know Ballygunner are coming in cold, but I still think I can't see. I just can't see it. It's 6 to 8 for me minimum.
I give you that one actually. Yeah, I'd go with Dunloy at 9 on the basis that I think they have a better chance of winning Ulster.
Okay, who are we settling on for the Tipperary champions?
So are we agreed on everything else? Fintan, are you happy enough with that otherwise?
The only one I'll throw into it is, like, do we think Clarenbridge have a shot at the Galway title? Because obviously that means they're straight into the All-Ireland semi-final. I mean, they destroyed Crockwell to the Galway semi. Just from the outside, it seems like maybe it's a year too soon, but like I think they won the minor again at the weekend. Like, just seems like a club on the absolute rise. I thought their performance was very, very good in that semi-final. So like, if you think they have a shot at beating Thomas's, obviously on the basis Thomas's look incredibly impressive in the semi-final, you know, given that there's no Connacht championship. And this is obviously effectively the Connacht final. Are you putting 2 Connacht teams into your top 10, you know?
Geez, that's a good point. He has us there, Michael.
They're 1 win away from being in the last 4, like. So, yeah. They'd be at the tail end of the 10 if they're in.
Well,
I'm only thinking about the last 2.
Ballier?
Well, you just talked up Ballier, why they should be in the top 10, so...
I know, but come on, it's not a simple thing.
But that was 5 minutes ago.
Like, the one big issue for Ballier is like they're in just a horrible side of the draw, you know. But like, if they do get over it, you then have to go to Thurles to beat the team champions, and you're still not even in a final, you know. It is just the way it works out. Whoever gets in that Munster quarter, it can be a fairly bit of a dogfight to get through.
So now, okay, so are we more or less agreed then only to pick the Tip champions? Clarenbridge in at 10?
And Dunloy at 9?
Dunloy at 9, Kilmallock at 8, Middleton at 7, Tip at 6. 1 to 5 we'd already agreed on.
Yeah, I go with that.
I'm happy with that, yeah.
So who are we picking in Tip? We'll have. You know what? We'll all pick our winner of the final now, straight up, without any in depth into it. Who we think, and we'll go on a majority decision. Fintan.
I'm going Loughmore.
In a word, Loughmore-Castleiney. That's 2.
Sure, that's all we need. I don't even need to reveal. I actually can't call that at all, so I'm delighted you picked for me. I'm just going to bring the image up on screen here. Are you happy with this, by the way, lads?
But we're happy now, but me and you were delighted with the last power rankings we did.
Is there? Do you feel like there's an element of horse trading here, Fintan? That you're not entirely happy with this?
Yeah, well, I think after the top 4, I think we're all taking a few shots in the dark, aren't we? A bit more, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a bit more interchangeable.
Here it is on the screen. Shamrocks 1, Ballygunner 2, St. Thomas's 3, Schlockneil 4, Kilmacud Crokes 5, 6 Loughmore-Castleiney, 7 Middleton, 8 Kilmallock, 9 Dunloy, and 10 Clarenbridge.
I love how Kilmallock have fallen 3 and they haven't played a game.
Yeah,
but Leinster got out of the top 10 and they haven't played a game.
That's also the image pinned on the Thurles Stars dressing room, isn't it, for training tomorrow night, you know?
Yeah. TJ Reid's face has changed with the Saints' face.
You can be sure they're watching too. So that's it. That's our club power rankings. Let us know what you think, if we're right, wrong, in between. But not only let us know where teams should be, let us know why, because that's a huge part of this. Without TK, I'd have Clarenbridge ahead of Ballier, but I wouldn't have either in the top 10, says ML89. Ballier love a dogfight, says Clare man, Patrick Hickey. Standard in Clare is Cat. Kelly is a generational player. If he's gone, then it'll be a cricket score, says Pure Hatchet.
I love, there was a comment there a minute ago, the spirit of Tony Kelly will see them through or something like that.
So we'll move on to football at this point. Fintan, I'm not sure if you had a chance to watch it or because you were down at Cork yesterday, But some of the we were saying earlier, some of the games that were on TV yesterday turned out to be quite disappointing. The Mayo football final, geez, it was drab enough stuff, I have to say. Loughmore winning 1-9 to 6 points against Ballinamore. But also the Dublin final was on. No score for 23 minutes until a goal for St. Jude's. Ultimately, though, they kind of left it behind them because Crokes won 1-7 to 1-6. Paul Mannion scored 2 points. A couple of those were frees. Callum Pearson with a brilliant winner at the very end. He got a ball into him, did a little bit of shake and bake and knocked it over from a tight angle. The goal had come from Cian O'Connor just before that. But yeah, like Pat Spillane, obviously Pat Spillane, as everyone knows from Kerry, his son, he made a few driving runs forward, but it was late in the second half, or midway through the second half. I think he had a chance to just fist one over at one stage. We might have just kept Crokes at arm's length a little bit, instead got blocked down, and I think it wasn't long after Crokes went up the other end and got a goal. But we're talking about dual clubs, and obviously Crokes only had one player who was on both panels, as far as I know, Sheehy, who's the full-back on the hurlers. It is a great achievement nonetheless, but for more heartache, Fintan, for St. Jude's, who've lost 3 finals, I think, in the last 12 or 13 years now.
Yeah, and they've been in a good few semis as well. Yeah, I only kind of saw the highlights of these games, but as you say, like the score lines were kind of what stood out. You know, I think it was 2 points to no score. There were 25 minutes of the Mayo final, and obviously the fact that there were so few scores in the Dublin final kind of stood out. Yeah, just heartache for Jude's. I mean, compared to 2018, I think it was when they lost by 5 points to Kilmacud. I think it was a couple of goals by Paul Mannion that night. Kind of got Kilmacud over the line. You know, this one probably is going to hurt them a bit more because they led for some kind of long stretches. And just couldn't quite get it done. I mean, like, so we talked about kind of Mount Bellew last week in terms of a side that if you stick at it, you'll kind of get over the line, but that's kind of not much consolation for them at this stage. Just to digress slightly, when you actually say about kind of the football finals at TV, I was tweeting an update at one stage from the Cork final, and someone replied to me, this was like 5 minutes ago, why isn't this game on TV? We've been stuck with 2 football finals, like, and I didn't kind of the hard to tell him, well, there was a live stream of the game, free as well, available on YouTube, very good quality, that if you didn't want the football, you could have been watching this all day, but obviously he was unaware of that, you know. But 2 kind of dogfights, it sounded like. You know, obviously just this time of year, and like I think Jude's kind of talked before the game, but they kind of got a bit more expansive this year. You know, David Mannix who come in from Austin Stacks, they kind of fancied their chances a bit, and even the fact that, you know, when they conceded that goal in the second half, they seemed to kind of weather the storm. But you know, very gut wrenching for them the way they did it. I mean, like in a wider sense, you think of, was it 2014 the hurling in the extra time? Similarly, just, I know different sets of players involved, but like they had that kind of game in the bag against Kilmacud in the hurling final and couldn't manage to kind of get over the line either. And the way the Dublin Championship has gone the last couple of years, you think you get out of it, you get into Leinster, the whole way can be kind of paid for you. But yeah, Kilmacud, it's sad. I was thinking, like, when was the last time a team scored 1 point in the first half of a county final and still managed to win it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it was turgid enough at times. Like any game that goes 23 minutes without a score, especially from the start, it just looks desperate up on the screen, doesn't it? 0-0.
Yeah.
Even like 1 or 2 points to nothing. I mean, the Mayo final.
There's only so many times you can say, you know, chess match or intriguing battle or tactical setup. You know, like the name of the game is scoring.
Yeah. And an interesting point made by Robbie Brennan afterwards, Michael, wasn't it, about Paul Mannion?
Yeah, definitely. He's been Dublin Club Player of the Year this year, I'd say, by a distance. He's been brilliant throughout the year. And his manager, Robbie Brennan, just said that he doesn't think that he'd be playing with Dublin again. He just said, my own opinion, he said, no, I think that's it. I think that's the last you'll see of him or see of Paul for Dublin. I'd say he'll answer that question, but I would think that that's it. What he has done in the game has been absolutely phenomenal for Dublin. Now for Kilmacud, I would say he'll just enjoy his football. That's my view, but Paul might have something different on it. Interesting that he would put that out there. If he didn't think that was the case, I'm sure he'd just say no comment. So you'd imagine he has some intel or is privy to some conversations maybe that we're not going to be privy to. But he'd be a massive loss for the Dubs going forward. I think he's only 28 still, turning 29 soon, but an absolute force of nature. For Dublin, I think he was all-star in 17, 18 and 19. I wonder, did him not being a starter in 2020 have a big influence on his decision to not go back in 2021 and potentially end his county career? Did take a year off before when he went studying in China and came back and was as good as ever. Dublin can't really afford to be without someone like that over the next couple of years. And he could, like, having Paul Mannion available goes from, you're iffy about Dublin next year to, right, Paul Mannion's back on board now. They've got another marquee forward on board, and all the experience has gone out the door. They have a bit of a back, and this will offset it. But without him would be a colossal loss.
Yeah, I think Paul Mannion's an absolutely brilliant player, but I think if Jack McCaffrey came back, I'd be nearly handing the cup out to Dublin next year straight away. I think he's arguably the best player in the country, and like, one of the big things in any sport really is, can you win a one-on-one battle? And the amount of times that it feels like Jack McCaffrey just cracks the game open by just taking someone on with an 80-yard burst and scoring a goal or a point or something. To me, Fintan, I think Jack McCaffrey is the biggest loss to the sport.
Yeah, definitely the biggest loss to the sport. One thing about Emmanuel is interesting, I suppose, when he's been playing this year, like, is that a sign that maybe where Dublin could use him? I mean, like, Shane Cunningham was kind of raving about that last week in terms of playing that more withdrawn role at centre forward. Like, the way the game has gone, like, the kind of specialist kind of corner forward thing has obviously kind of changed a bit. Like, one of the consequences yesterday, I mean, this is projected, and obviously I'm presuming the way Dublin clubs, Kilmacud obviously got caught by Mullin, but I mean, the fact that they won this year now, like, if they keep going, I mean, I presume they've vaulted up the All-Ireland football rankings in terms of favourites. Is that going to affect potential of Dublin call? If they lost yesterday, would you maybe been enticed back in December and look ahead? Whereas now, if they keep going till after Christmas, would it be difficult? But Cunningham kind of touched on that last week as well. The Kilmacud captain, he kind of said, look, he's kind of busy professionally, and like Mannion himself was at a gig last summer, and he kind of talked about that. Others' areas of his life has moved on, so. Not like there have been kind of rumours, I suppose, the last while that he would kind of come back into it, but not 100% sure. I think there might be something about Robbie Brennan is saying, and as like Verney said, the fact that he put it out there as to whether he'd come back, and it's just interesting. I suppose the similar circumstances to what we talked about the Conor Lehan thing earlier, like guy going back, giving his club absolutely everything, looks kind of rejuvenated as opposed to, and like Ballymun guys touched on this last year in terms of the way they won the Dublin County. Obviously, that was due to the split season and the way COVID impacted on the schedule, but Dublin more than anyone, because championships have gone on so late. Some clubs are getting their county stars back, and they're absolutely wrecked, in October towards the end of the season. Whereas like Mannion definitely looks very rejuvenated with his form over the last couple of weeks.
Do you reckon, Michael, I'll throw it to you first, that Kilmacud, because the Leinster club, I think semi-finals but definitely final are going to be in Croke Park, that's a huge benefit to them, and the fact that they've got just so many silky, stylish footballers.
Yeah, conditions are going to be perfect. Even if it's a horrible day, the pitch is still going to be in perfect order. It'll still be top of the ground. It's not going to be a provincial venue. You know yourself, we've all played in games and watched games where provincial venue, the ground isn't as good. Maybe the dimensions are a bit tighter. You can drag a team into a bit of a dogfight. Happens a lot less at Croke Park. The cream nearly always rises to the top up there. Just with regards to the conditions are perfect. The pitch dimensions are obviously very, very big. They're as large as you can have them, I think. So, yeah, I definitely think that plays into their favour. It's another thing that plays into their favour. And you'd imagine, while everybody marvelled over the miracle of Mullinyacht in 2018, they were on the wrong side of that. And I'm sure they'll have a chance at rectifying that. They probably would have loved a shot at Mullinyacht. Again, they won't get that because they were knocked out by Blessington. But they definitely probably have a few wrongs to right over the winter.
Yeah. Senior 2 final over the weekend in Dublin. Both Coola and Templeogue were already going up to Senior 1 by dint of being in the final. But it was a very dramatic game. It was actually very dark quite early in the game. So when it went to extra time, that was not ideal. But Coola were ahead, I think 5 points ahead. Conor Callahan was playing very well. Luke Keaton was playing quite well. And towards the end of the game, a couple of high balls went into a clearly not fully fit Owen O'Gara for Templeogue Sing Street. So he brought one ball down for himself, blasted into the back of the net. Textbook Owen O'Gara, where he's just put the boot through it. And then I think just another ball went in later on again. And the ball came into Owen O'Gara again. Coola had pushed all the way up the field. Ball came to O'Gara. He actually collected it, tried to turn and knock it over the bar. So he put the boot through it again. But turned out that the defender got a touch on it. And because of the touch, it actually ended up looping over the goalkeeper into the net. And that put Sing Street ahead. Coola went up the other end and ended up taking it to extra time then. And then it was like a speculative ball into the 14 or into the 6-yard box at the very end. And 6'7" Padder O'Cofic Byrne, who people will know as a Dublin panellist, came in and just panned it into the back of the net. So that's my recollection of that game over the weekend. But I'll tell you, I threw on the Tipperary jersey, and I threw it on for a good reason. The orgaretro.com, get 15% off the promo code OurGame. But the Tipperary football final. Now, while the other stuff was going on TV and it wasn't particularly exciting, this was. Because Clonmel Commercials, who are a class team, they have a lot of players that are involved in the county setup, even Seamus Kennedy, who's involved with the county hurlers. They went 1-2, I think, to nothing ahead early on in the game. Looked like they were going to coast the whole notion of Loughmore, that all these games are going to catch up with them. But eventually they just wore them down. Clonmel missed an easy goal chance midway through the second half, would have sealed the game completely. But John McGrath, that man, he gets the ball 7 or 8 yards out, blasted into the back of the net in injury time. I think it's the first time they led in the whole game, and county champions 112 to 111. I mean, Fintan, where have you seen it before? A lad getting man of the match 6 weeks in a row, as John McGrath has done between both Codes and Tipperary.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much unprecedented what he's doing, you know. It's just unbelievable, like, you know, I mean, and it was the same. It's just the nature of the big scores. Like, it was the same in the semi-final, you know. I think they were training for a long stage of that against Moyle Rovers, and then he gets the goal at the very, very end. And like, these aren't obviously, you know, nice time of year to be playing. It's tough conditions, energy sapping. Like, it defies everything that we talk about in terms of kind of burnout and not being able to manage it and juggle it and all that, like, you know. But obviously the resilience is incredibly impressive. I mean, I could be wrong, but they led for long stages of last year's football final, and then I think it was that late Quinlivan goal kind of gave Clonmel the kind of momentum. So obviously a lot of the focus was on the hurling, because that was on TV, the way they lost to Kildangan. But the football, I remember seeing the photos afterwards, they obviously looked fairly broken up after that, like, you know. But like, that's the fourth medal for a lot of them now in football, 13, 14 and 16. Just, yeah, absolutely brilliant win for them, like, you know, in terms of kind of hanging in there, you know. And like, Commercials, I think that's going to be a bit of a sickener. Obviously, it would have been the first chance to complete 3 in a row since the 60s for a team that have obviously won Munster and got to Munster finals. That to me is the sort of team that the way the championship fell last year would have kind of stuck in the craw of it. The fact that they didn't get a chance to go into Munster, I'm sure they would have loved to move on now. But it kind of sets up a kind of novel enough, you know, Loughmore against Aero Guinness, 2 clubs who've been, you know, going on the football and hurling front this year. You know, Aero getting to the Clare hurling semi-final in a first round Munster football quarter-final. But yeah, it's hugely impressive, you know. I haven't seen much of him, but like, Conor Ryan kind of stands out in terms of the scoring. I think he's one of the few guys, is he, that plays football only. Yeah. But I think he kicked 7, did he? Was it 2 or 3 from play? So obviously that was a fairly important contribution in terms of getting over the line. And like I said earlier, I just think that does wonders for them now in terms of getting back for the hurling this week. You know, just at least we do have 1 trophy, and you just have that momentum, you know, as opposed to trying to get ready for hurling replay, having lost the football.
Yeah, Shane Powers says John McGrath has to be the best dual player in the country on form. Con would have been for a few years, but McGrath is just on another planet at the moment. Also, ML89, how have Loughmore done in Munster at football whenever they've gotten out?
They lost the like, they won 1 year. They were down in Crokes when Crokes were kind of at the peak of their powers. And then the other, remember, I don't think they were actually allowed into Munster. Do you remember? I think it was the year 14 when Tip got to the hurling. The final was played on Stephen's Day. Yeah. So I think Tip didn't elect anyone, or maybe Tip sent someone else forward. So the draw has been kind of a bit unkind to them. But at least this year the Kerry champions are on the other side of it. Like, so it's Loughmore or Aero Guinness will play the Cork champions in the semi, and I'd say whoever gets out of Loughmore Ennis will, you know, they'd fancy that. And it'd be a big, and the fact that it's not Nemo, you know, isn't that kind of maybe aura that they would have had over the last couple of years. So whoever between the Cork there and Tip champions, obviously it's a big chance to get to a Munster final now.
Yeah, the county intermediate football final in Tip, Drummond beat Grange Moakler Ballyneal 2-11 to 9 points there. Seamus Callanan was playing throughout that game. Emmett Maloney, I believe, was one of the star men. In the Waterford final, the Nair beat Rathgormack 1-7 to 9 points. Aaron Ryan netting the crucial goal of the game there. Michael, who you wanted to talk about if any team in Ireland which focuses heavily on one code tried the other code instead, who would make the biggest impact? Is there any particular club or county team you were looking at?
Oh no, but it's just like, you know, John McGrath's obviously shown what he can do with the big ball, as has his brother Noel, as has their younger brother Brian. You know, you're thinking if Tipperary sent everybody playing football, if Seamus Kennedy went back playing football, if who else, like, I don't know if he's played much growing up. You'd imagine Paddy Matter would be a half-decent footballer too. There's a lot of guys there. You're thinking if they just focused all their attentions, it's never going to happen. It's a very hypothetical thing. But if they focus all their attentions, could Tip be, a seriously good inter-county football team? They're good already, but could they really, realistically compete for All Irelands? I think it'd be an interesting one. That's never going to happen. Probably just like Con O'Callaghan and Kieran Kilkenny and Cormac Costello and a few other guys are probably never going to play hurling for Dublin. But again, that'd be really interesting if Dermot Connolly played hurling for Dublin. Is there anyone else you can think that stands out, or any kind of counties where, geez, if everybody just shifted focus for a couple of years, maybe they could go to town?
What do you think, Fintan?
I think you said the two main examples there. Like, even I think underage guys, like one of the guys that stood out in the Tip 15 team, they got to the minor final, Alan Tyne, and obviously went down the rugby route then, but he's back now and he's obviously involved in hurling. Brian McGrath was obviously a big part of that team then, obviously John McGrath before. That kind of stands out. I remember it was a kind of discussion point in Cork around the time Donald O'Grady took charge in 2003, because then Tom Kenny, Sutanto Halfine, John Gardner, Ronan Curran would all have been well-touted underage footballers, but the preference at the time, they all kind of went down the hurling route. Look, obviously they all got their All-Ireland medals, so probably vindicated that kind of decision. I'm sure, like, it's at a lower level, but I'm sure Waterford would probably feel something similar. Jamie Barron, Conor Lehan is an absolutely superb footballer. Some of the stuff he's done in Munster club campaigns as a forward. Like Desi Hutchinson played Waterford football before he actually played Waterford hurling. I think there's a couple of other Ballygunner guys that actually play for Galtier in football. And, it would be a big county where there is kind of a dual thing. And then the other, I suppose, Wexford is probably one, where most of the county clubs kind of operate at both levels, obviously at senior level, but the shift, I think, seems to be kind of gone more towards guys playing football the last couple of years. But like the O'Connors, for example, Barry O'Connor obviously went to Sydney Swans on the back of underage displays, but like he played in a Hogan Cup with, like, I think Rory O'Connor, maybe Jack O'Connor, maybe that wrong. But there was a good few kind of well-known hurling faces playing at that level in colleges. So the Waterford Wexford, look, the dominance towards hurling isn't going to shift. It probably shifted for a while in Wexford towards football, but maybe they would be two that would be interesting if they, if Efi Fitzgerald, the Waterford manager, was able to call in some of the hurlers, and similarly in Wexford.
Yeah, just on that chain, like, Waterford could fire up the rankings if they had all, like, just say they had all those players available to them. You're probably thinking of someone who's coming from a low enough base, Division 4, mid to lower Division 4. Like, could they become a Division 2 side in a couple of years if they had those lads available to them? They probably could.
Throw in Tony Penn with the Clare footballers.
I tell you, yeah, never know.
Yeah, Shane Power.
He played minor football for Clare, right? And I think he was in a club senior final a couple of years ago. I've never seen him play now, but it's supposed to be very, very handy,
Yeah, Shane Powers' Lee Chin would be a class footballer, especially considering he played LOI for Wexford Youths years ago, and obviously he played dual for the county as well. In the Mayo football final over the weekend, we already kind of touched on it. Knockmore, they retained the title with a 1-9 to 6-point win over Belmullet. Thought Belmullet were a little bit disappointing. Ryan O'Donoghue scored 3, none from play. Shea O'Donoghue scored a point. They did struggle. I thought anytime they carried it up and tried to bring it inside the Knockmore 45, they really, really struggled in terms of ideas. And I don't know, maybe it's just the class of Knockmore who turned them over time after time. I thought Kevin McLaughlin was very good orchestrating things. That goal by James Ruddy in the first half, which allowed them to kick on to a 1-4 to 1 point advantage. It just kind of, from that stage, and I know they brought it back to 2 points, but it always just seemed like Knockmore had that little bit more, and just not the greatest game, I have to say. A lot of people were saying the same about the Kerry semi-final on Saturday evening. Actually, there was the 2 semi-finals. Austin Stacks beat Brendan's after penalties, 5-3 on penalties, and Cairns O'Reilly's beat Dr. Croak's 15 points to 14. It's going to mean an all-Tralee final here. But I didn't see the entirety of it. I saw extra time and the penalties in the Stacks Brendan's game. But for long spells, that wasn't supposed to be the greatest game either, Fintan.
No, definitely wasn't. I felt watching it, you kind of got rewarded for sticking with it, with the drama, the fact that it went extra time, the fact that injury time was so good. And then obviously the penalty shootout. I mean, it was 3 points apiece at halftime. It was just very, very cagey, very, very bit grim, bit dour, to be honest, at stages in the second half. Quality defending was good, and there was some interesting points there. Obviously, Stephen O'Cumber being brought into the St. Brennan's team, put straight in on Kieran Donaghy.
He's some
Similar
unit,
to Mark O'Connor a couple of years ago, another Geelong AFL player, guy with experience, comes in for Dingle out of nowhere, put straight in full back to Mark Donaghy when Dingle beat them, But yeah, he's some athlete, coming forward. He kicked the opening point of the game. Obviously, if anyone didn't see it, the injury to Diarmuid O'Connor was the big kind of talk about at the second throw-in.
The throw-in, yeah. Like players leaning in. I mean, Harry Kane is often criticised for it in soccer, but yeah, it is definitely
I think, to be fair to the Stacks game, when I watched the replay, I think he kind of got bumped by someone else. He wasn't looking. And initially I thought O'Connor was going to play on. I thought they were basically just sorting a dislocated finger or something. But then he kind of seemed to be holding his shoulder as well. And there was a big, long hold up. But then they took him off. You're thinking, without him now, they don't kind of have a chance. But then they still kind of kept him in charge for much of the second half. But the contestation of the goals, there was unbelievable drama at the end of the game when, I don't know if anyone see it, it was a 45-yard free for Stacks, which was kind of under hit and basically just seemed to deceive the keeper. It looked like he basically touched it onto the post. It came back out. He was kind of on the ground. It hit his shin, looped up into the air into the net. But then he came forward. They got 2 points, and it was he who came forward to take a free to draw the game. He missed it, but it went out for a 45, and then he nailed the 45 in the 68th minute and went extra time. But then a ball looped in over his head, unfortunately, for a second goal again. Get the initiative to Stacks in extra time. And then there was this guy, Ivan Parker, who came on, and he came on very early because for an injured guy, named Fitzmaurice said, he's a bit of a streaky forward. He didn't start, but he scored 1-5 overall, scored a goal that looked like it won the game for them in the last minute of extra time, but Stacks went down the field and managed to tie it up. And then they obviously won the penalty shootout. It was kind of touched on afterwards, like the interviews with Donaghy and Wayne Quillen and the Stacks manager. It was a pretty patchy display, really, for a side who'd beaten the county champions in the first round, but maybe the best possible way to go into a final. A lot to kind of work on, just kind of eked it out, really. And like Donaghy said afterwards, look, either way, it's going to be a massive final against Crokes or against our near neighbours. But I think it promises to be an absolutely amazing game in terms of the atmosphere. The two teams, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only comparison I can think of is the Newbridge, Kildare, Sarsfield playing Moorfield. I'm trying to think of a town, not a city area now, but a town where two clubs would have met in a county senior final. I know is there a big one that I'm not thinking of now.
There must be, but Fintan, even the fact that in the relegation final, then you're going to have Killarney rivals, Legion and Dr. Crokes, who lost to Cairns O'Reilly. It's kind of, it has to be a double header.
The confusion, I think, for a lot of people in terms of trying to understand the Kerry system, but yeah, that was the consequence of yesterday because Crokes not getting to the final. I don't know will there be a double header, but someone did say that would be fairly sticking it into them if they played it as the curtain raiser to the county senior final. And there's a big thing, Kerry, about where a game's held in Killarney or in Tralee. I don't know, they might I'd say they'll probably do it as separate games, one in Fitzgerald Stadium because there's two Killarney teams, and then obviously one in Tralee because of the final. But yeah, the consequences are very, very interesting. You head into early December, games with huge ramifications, I only saw bits of yesterday's game, but the big thing seemed to be, so it was one of the Cairns rallies come back, and obviously just two, kind of how hard hitting it was. There was 2 red cards, it was a black card. Different players kind of went off injured on both sides. Crokes had to replace their keeper. Seemed like a very, very physical, kind of aggressive game. But huge thing for Cairns rallies to get back to a final. They hadn't been one in 13 years. So I think it sets up, pretty tasty looking final now between the two Tralee sides in a fortnight's time.
I know you have to go about your day now, Fintan, so appreciate you joining us here. And just a reminder, if you do want to get a present for Christmas for a family member or a friend, have a look out for the book that Fintan's after doing with the Milers, John and David, Myler, A Family Memoir. So thanks very much for joining us, Fintan, and we'll be chatting to you again soon.
No worries, lads. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, Fint.
Okay, so that was Fintan O'Toole there. We'll move on to the Leinster Club Championship because you were at Mullinachta and Blessington. Mullinachta, Longford champions again, obviously Leinster champions from a couple of years ago. They were 1-5 to a point ahead in the first half, and Blessington somehow won this game.
Yeah, crazy game. It was funny that the lads from Shannonside Radio were doing commentary close to where I was sitting down reporting, and it was 5 or 6 minutes into the game, and they were saying Blessington still waiting for their first point in the Leinster Club Championship since 1983, and they were waiting till the 33rd minute, basically the 3rd minute of injury time, before their cornerback Conor Kenny came up and kicked the point. And they were just very, very poor in the first half. Blessington were, nobody really wanted to take a shot on. They had a load of possession, but didn't seem comfortable in front of the goals. Mullinachta, Gary Rogers got a penalty in the 18th minute. They actually lost Aidan McGilligan to a red card 8 minutes before that, and you're kind of thinking, okay, this might be a bit of an equaliser. It wasn't. They kicked 3 in a row in the second quarter, or 1-5 to no score up. Ballinamore didn't get this score, actually missed a handy free before the break, and you're just thinking, like, there's no way back here whatsoever. The third quarter was one of the most bizarre quarters of all time. You know, the way they could always have different notes in a different quarter. The only things that happened of note in the third quarter were Anthony McLaughlin kicked a point in the 31st minute, and then 7 or 8 minutes later, Craig Maguire was sent off. Nothing else happened of any note during that quarter. So it was 1-5-2 at the end of the third quarter, and you still think Mullinlock are cruising. Then all of a sudden, Blessington bring on a couple of players, various guys that couldn't start because of injuries. Like David Bootman came on. Dan Silk Featherstone came on and got a goal. Bootman kicked 2 frees. Craig Quinn, full forward, kicked a couple of lovely scores. And then all of a sudden, like, they're after holding them scoreless from the 30th minute all the way to the end of full time. And it was just building and building and building and building. And Blessington just took over. Silk Featherstone got the goal.
What a name, by the way.
Yeah, great name. Yeah, great name. And they won 1-7-5. And in spite of their captain, Patrick O'Connor, he went travelling after the county final, which you can't blame a fella. I think he was waiting around for the last 2 years to go travelling. I remember Noel Connors did something similar when Passage won the Waterford title and he missed the Munster campaign, and their forward Paul McLaughlin was unavailable as well. So they were missing 2 of their best players, but it was the subs that really turned it around. And it's just, it was hard to believe, and this might not make sense, but I do think it's a reality. As unbelievably good as the Leinster title was from Mullinlock 3 years ago, I think this would sicken them equally as much, because they were just in pole position. They would have, like, they were massive favourites to win this game. Didn't look like a game where they had any chance of losing. They had the upper hand in most positions, and within, I think it was when Maguire got sent off for Blessington, rather than playing a sweeper, they just pushed up, went man on man. Mullinlock couldn't win a kick out at the middle of the field, just couldn't get their hands on ball. And it was David Bootman, who's actually grandson of Jack Bootman, the former GAA president. He was huge in around there, absolutely huge. And he turned it around. It was a crazy comeback, absolutely mad. And it sets up a Leinster quarter-final against Naas, and a load of the Blessington lads went to school in Naas. Like, you mightn't think it, but geographically they're like practically neighbours. And
did you see how horrible the winning goal was? So, like, Tullamore were trying to clear it, and there was just a bit of a schmozzle in the square. One of the Tullamore defenders just tried to boot it. Derek Irwin came in with the hands like that, and it just went straight into the.
It was absolutely blessed, yeah, absolutely blessed, and that obviously made it a very, very tough weekend for Tullamore. But that sets up a mad kind of quarter final between 2 neighbouring clubs, where a load of lads would have went to secondary school together. And I think there's a local derby. Montpellier, my lot are playing. Who are they playing in the semi-final? It turned out to be a local derby, and it could be the Pearses that they're playing in the Connacht semi-final. That's a local derby, despite them being in opposite counties. This is a local derby, despite them being in different counties as well. But it was one of the maddest games. It was for about 40 minutes. It was one of the worst games I was ever at. There was nobody there. The quality was really poor. And that's what you have to love about GAA. If a game is tight, it doesn't matter whether the quality is poor. All you want is things start happening when games are tight, and everything is dramatic. And that was just, it was unbelievably dramatic.
Yeah, sure. Crokes versus Judes was terrible, but for long spells, but then it was absolutely brilliant in the last 5 or 10 minutes of the game. One of the greatest games I've ever seen is Donegal against Kildare in 2011, the Kevin Cassidy winner, but that went extra time. But for 50 odd minutes of normal time, it was, honest to God, I wanted to be anywhere except in there. It was absolutely terrible. Naomh Martins of Louth, they beat Rathvilly, actually hammered them 2-16 to 1-5, so they're going to drive on into the Leinster Championship.
Sam Mulroy was very good, I believe, and they're not bad, and they've been in the last 4 Louth finals, winning the last 2, so they'll kind of fancy their chances of getting going a bit further. Just interesting to say about games there, entertaining games that were tight. I remember Burr beat Crinkle in Junior Hurling Championship many moons ago, or they didn't beat them, sorry, it was 1-2 apiece after 60 minutes of hurling, and by God, it was captivating stuff. It actually was. It was just pure dramatic, because when it gets to that stage where nobody can score, like a free on the 21 that goes over the bar is a really big deal. Do you know what I mean? Any sort of a score is a big deal. But it was, that Blessington game was crazy. One of the maddest games we've been at in a long time. To not score for 33 minutes and then hold the other team scoreless for the remainder of the game is just like, you couldn't write that.
Isn't it interesting that, you've kind of already touched on Mount Bellew, my lot. Everyone assumed that they would beat Ballinamore-Sean O'Heslin. So Ballinamore had played their really exciting Leitrim final several weeks ago. But because of the quality of Mount Bellew, you just kind of assumed, they're beating Corofin, who won a 3 in a row. They'll cruise on. But they were 5 points down at half-time before eventually squeaking this one out. So, I mean, partly you have to say, maybe we didn't do enough, you haven't done enough due diligence on Sean O'Heslin's, but maybe for Mount Bellew too. It's that whole thing. You get that breakout county title, first time in 35 years. You probably had a few heavy days at it. It is hard to reset and go again.
I think Val Daly said as much. He used the old dirty petrol cliche after. But it's a fair point. Maybe not dirty petrol. It could be dirty Guinness, maybe that you're getting out of your system. But while they turned around that game, I haven't seen it yet, and I believe a lot of the journalists that were there actually couldn't even see what happened at the end. But apparently, John Daly made a ridiculous game-saving block at the very end of the game for Mount Bellew. Mount Bellew, my law, not Mount Bellew, my lock. I'm told from Galway aficionado, so it's Mount Bellew, my law. And they've gotten over that. You kind of could fancy them going on a nice bit in Connacht now. They're after beating Corofin, the standard bearers in the game. So you could see them going on a nice bit further now. They've loads of talent, and overcoming Ballinamore in the way that they did can only feed more confidence into them as well, having been down by 9 points, as you said early in the game.
Yeah, Turlestrand, they beat St. Kieran's of London by 9 points to 4, and they'll go on and play Knockmore next. I think Knockmore could be a very good team as this Connacht Championship goes on. But then again, who knows, maybe Turlestrand...
Just on that chain, Knockmore actually have a basketball coach working with them the whole time, Terry Kennedy, who's like a well-renowned basketball coach in Ireland. So they were kind of very well set up defensively, even playing zones, and the way they were the way screen lads at times as well in attack. So I just thought that was interesting. And then obviously you've Kieran Donaghy, he's one of the best basketballers in the country. So there's a fair old basketball influence on football at the moment.
Yeah. And then the Ulster Club Championship over the weekend, the Glen Watty Grahams of Derry, they beat St. Eunan's by
a point. You were a good man. They beat them. Well, listen, that's the way we'd be saying it if we probably weren't live, if we're just having a conversation.
Danny Talon kicked a late free there to kind of bring the Glen over the line. I think afterwards one of the people involved with the Glen said it was a bit of a robbery. So that's the Glen staying going. And again, breakthrough county title there. Sometimes once you get that first win when you're into the provincial championship under the belt, that can kind of set you up. DG says here, Meads Junior B and intermediate hurling finals went to extra time. Not being able to score is the best part. It's like snooker and someone in snooker. It's one for the purists.
It's gas that he should say that, because I was only thinking of that earlier when you were saying even about the Dublin senior football final. Snooker is the only game, I think, where you can not score and it can be as captivating as when you do score. It's definitely purist stuff now, in fairness, but I actually would prefer a frame of snooker where it's all that kind of, putting them, just being real miserable, leaving them on the balk line and that kind of the whole time, leaving them on the balk cushion, making it real difficult for them. That's really intriguing. I'm not sure if it's as interesting in football and hurling as that. Now, you want some scores on the board.
I feel it's very, when I'm watching snooker, and I love those safety battles as well, I feel very sorry for the referee when he has to keep putting all the balls back, especially if a few have been disturbed when someone's trying to get out of a snooker and they hit the wrong ball on the way to trying to hit the red. I find that very, very tough. Can you think of the name of the Dutch referee?
Jan Verhaas.
Good knowledge. That's pretty sweet knowledge.
They've been helped out by the screen. They have somebody now helping them back there, basically telling them they need to put the ball here and there. But when they didn't have that assistance to them, it was an absolute disaster. One of my favourite interviews I ever did actually was with the snooker referee Michaela Tabb over in England during the World Championship one year. And it's she was saying actually how hot it is in the auditorium and how easy it is. Like some referees and different things, you could literally fall asleep standing up and different things. And you could. And to be honest with you, I've fallen asleep in the Crucible every time I've been there. And that's not through boredom. It's such a lovely, relaxing place. If you ever need to go relax for a couple of days and take in the snooker, there's no place better.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain I'm going to try and get to the Crucible next year. I think I have to. Yeah.
I'll see you there. I'm going to be there anyway, so I'll see you there.
Right, quick football ranking, says Pure Hatchet.
There's no such thing as a quick ranking.
Certainly not starting from scratch. We will do one, but we'll probably leave it another week or two, let a couple of more teams get knocked out, have all the county titles done. I'm not sure, is there many county finals left to be played in football at this stage? There can't, like the Kerry one outside of that, I'm not too sure. Has
Cork been played?
I don't think the Cork one's been played yet either.
There's not too many more outside of that now, I'd say.
Yeah, okay, but we will do that soon, and it'll be the usual carnage. We might bring Fintan in as well, so we've someone else to blame. And also, actually, I thought it was quite good that we were able to do a majority decision.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it does make it an awful lot easier, doesn't it? And plus, you were just basically able to just like not give a verdict on the Tipperary final as well,
which I was very happy with. Okay, that's it for the show today. Thanks very much to Michael Verney, as always. Please do subscribe to the channel. Makes a huge difference in terms of it's the more people that follow it, the more it's recommended to other people. Obviously, we want the channel to grow. If you want the audio podcast, patreon.com/OurGame. Really would appreciate you following the show and obviously helping support the channel, and support orgaretro.com too. 15% off with the promo code OurGame. You've all the jerseys there up on screen, loads more, including the ones we're wearing here, this Tipperary one, that beautiful Cork one. That's it for the show. Please do, as I said, follow us all over the different social channels, and we'll be back again on Thursday. Thanks very much, Michael.
Cheers, Shana.